Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the stone-cold corridors of medieval justice, where the rules are written in blood, the punishments are painted in horror, and the only thing you can count on is that you probably won't survive this. Seriously, if you think modern laws are strict, just wait till someone accuses you of stealing bread or, I don't know, glancing sideways at a bishop's chicken. You could end up in a shame mask shaped like a donkey's face, or better yet, boiled in oil. With garlic, possibly. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. No pressure, but you might want to, just in case some ghostly torturer shows up tonight to collect you for a very immersive history lesson. Let me know in the comments, what city are you watching from, and what time is it right now where you are? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You begin in a cell. It smells like mould, stale blood, and something vaguely soupy. Possibly your imagination. The walls are rough stone, slick with condensation, and the only light comes from a high, narrow slit, probably designed to be more for psychological torment than actual ventilation. Outside, somewhere far above, a market bustles, a bell rings, and you hear the faint, ominous clatter of iron chains. Welcome to the dungeon. This is where most of these stories start. Not in battlefields or palaces, but down here in the bowels of some medieval town where justice is less Lady Liberty and more angry innkeeper with an axe. And no, you're not just visiting. You've been accused of something. The charges. Vague, possibly invented. The constable didn't look too concerned about the details. Maybe someone accused you of heresy or theft, or you just looked a little too educated for the villagers' taste. Either way, you're here now. You take a breath and the air makes your throat itch. You shuffle to the edge of your cell and peek through the bars. Across the hall, a man is strapped to a rotating wheel. Not turning yet, but the guards are laughing like it's about to get festive. The wheel, by the way, is one of many tools in the medieval punishment kit. The breaking wheel, as it was called, wasn't designed for efficiency. No, it was art. Dark, splintery, bone-crunching art. The condemned would be tied to it, limbs stretched out, and then the executioner, often wearing his best angry smith look, would swing a hammer at your arms and legs in a specific pattern, like playing percussion on a human xylophone. Sometimes you'd die right away. Sometimes you'd live, every bone crushed, until crows decided you were tender enough. Historically, this was often reserved for serious crimes, treason, murder, or just ticking off the local noble. One famous case in 14th century France involved a man whose wheel punishment was so drawn out, witnesses reportedly fainted watching it. But here's the kicker. In some places, after your bones were broken and your consciousness flickered like a dying candle, they'd prop the wheel vertically, nail it to a pole, and leave you there as a warning. A human wind ornament. But let's say you weren't important enough for a wheel. Maybe your punishment was more performative, because medieval justice wasn't always about pain. Sometimes it was about spectacle. You hear footsteps now echoing down the corridor. Someone's coming. They've got the jangle of keys and the jolly whistle of a man who enjoys his job too much. He opens your door, and before you can ask what's happening, you're being dragged toward the courtyard. Outside, the air hits you like a slap, cool and heavy with wood smoke. Townspeople are gathering. A crier reads out your crime, though he stumbles a bit on the words. Apparently you're guilty of disrupting the moral fabric of our goodly borough. That's it. No elaboration. And that's when you see it. A barrel with holes cut in it. A ton. And now we're going to put you in it. Welcome to the drunkard's cloak. Or as you'll come to know it. The world's most humiliating fashion statement. They shove you into the barrel so your arms and legs stick out through holes, like a very poorly constructed scarecrow. The thing weighs a ton, and it's impossible to balance properly. Every time you try to walk, you stumble forward. People laugh, someone throws a turnip, kids follow you down the street singing a crude song that rhymes your name with smelly trout. This punishment wasn't designed to maim you. It was designed to make you regret your life choices. Originating mainly in the 17th century, but foreshadowed by earlier shaming devices, the drunkard's cloak was used in towns across Europe, especially England, for chronic public drunkenness. Imagine being forced to wander your town all day dressed like an actual ale barrel. It's like a public service announcement, but with fewer graphics and more bruised ribs. The real twist? Some historians debate whether this was used as often as old records suggest. Was it widespread, or just a colourful anecdote copied from one legal record to another? One thing's for sure, Enough illustrations survive that somewhere, at some time, someone waddled through a medieval street stuck in a cask, while onlookers laughed and maybe spit in his ale-hole. But here's a fringe fact for you. Similar barrels were reportedly used to shame other kinds of behaviour, like excessive gossiping or breaking Lent. Yes, being a talkative drunk during fasting season might earn you a double sentence. You stumble, the tun tilts, a child pokes it with a stick, you try to glare at him, but it's hard to look menacing when your head is sticking out of a barrel like a very grumpy turtle. Eventually, the guards decide you've had enough lesson learning for one day, and you're escorted back to your cell, arms aching, pride shattered. You collapse against the stone wall and hear the wheel creaking from across the corridor. Someone else didn't get off so easy. Tomorrow might bring something worse. You overheard a guard talking about a shame flute, and no, that's not a medieval boy band, it's very real, very metal, and coming soon. Sleep tight, morning creeps into the dungeon like it's embarrassed to be here. The slit of light in your wall goes from pitch black to a washed-out grey, and with it comes the rustling sound of a rat scuttling off to whatever rat tavern they spend their days in. You stretch, sore in places you didn't even know could ache, your muscles still tight from yesterday's tour of shame inside the drunkard's cloak. The memory of that barrel scraping your thighs and the relentless laughter still echoes in your skull like a drunk tambourine. You're barely halfway through your first sigh when the door grinds open again. Same guard, same cheerful whistle, but this time he's carrying something that looks musical. What he's got slung over his shoulder isn't a lute or a harp. No, it's a long iron contraption, flute-shaped maybe, but thick, brutal, and decorated with grotesque faces. You blink, hoping it's a hallucination brought on by hunger and humiliation. But nope, that, dear friend, is the shame flute. They don't even explain. One guard grabs your arms, the other fastens the heavy iron instrument around your neck. It's clamped tightly with a collar, the flute's body lying horizontally against your chest. Your hands are cuffed to the instrument itself, so you appear to be playing it like some nightmare bard who can't escape his set list. This medieval punishment, mostly associated with German-speaking regions during the Middle Ages, was a favourite for musicians who played badly, missed church gigs, or just annoyed the local nobility with their lack of rhythm. Imagine bombing a lute solo and getting sentenced to iron karaoke hell. But it wasn't limited to musicians. The flute became a general-purpose shaming device for any disruptive citizen. Drunks, thieves, gossipers. The real pain wasn't physical, though the iron was heavy and restrictive. It was public mortification. You were paraded through town like some twisted marching band reject, while people booed, pointed, and occasionally threw cabbage. Your escort hauls you through the narrow cobbled streets of town. The sky is a pale, listless blue. Shopkeepers glance up, some amused, some indifferent, a few genuinely embarrassed on your behalf. A group of children follows you, mimicking your clumsy gait and pretending to blow on invisible flutes. You try to glare at them, but it's hard when you're drooling slightly and wearing 40 pounds of metal. One elderly man raises an eyebrow. "Another one, second this week." You want to tell him it's all a misunderstanding, that you've never even held a flute in your life. But with your jaw locked in a grimace and your arms strapped in place, words aren't really an option. Now here's the fun part. Historical records on the shame flute are scarce, which makes scholars argue about just how widely it was used. Some claim it was more symbolic than actual, maybe a threat rarely carried out. Others argue they were part of a broader tradition of musical-themed punishments in which art and humiliation collided with spectacular cruelty. Quirkily enough, there are surviving shame flutes in museums today, grotesquely ornate, as if the blacksmiths making them couldn't help but add a little flourish to their cruelty. Some have creepy faces carved into the end, possibly to mock the wearer. One has a protruding metal tongue, like the flute itself is also disappointed in you. As you shuffle past the tavern, one of the drunks from yesterday raises a mug and offers a theatrical bow. "Play us a song, maestro," he slurs, then laughs himself into a hiccup. You imagine this would be the part in the movie where the protagonist finds some shred of dignity and plays a soulful subtle tune that brings the crowd to tears. But this is not that story. This is the Middle Ages. No redemption arcs, just rusted metal, judgmental peasants, and cold weather that's making your fingers go numb. After what feels like 100 years of slow, shameful parading, the guards finally drag you back to the dungeon. The shame flute is unstrapped with a painful squeal of hinges. You sag with relief as the weight lifts from your shoulders, but the feeling of judgment sticks around like a bad aftertaste. Back in your cell, you slump against the wall, exhausted and humiliated. Somewhere nearby, someone groans in pain. Across the corridor, the guy on the wheel has disappeared. Whether he was released or relocated or rotated into pulp isn't clear. You don't ask her. A few hours pass. You drift in and out of uneasy sleep. Your dreams a mashed-up circus of flute-mocking children and barrels rolling downhill. And just when you start to think things can't get worse, a new sound trickles down the corridor. Not footsteps this time. Voices. Low, ceremonial, and unsettlingly cheerful. You crawl toward the bars again and peer out just in time to catch a glimpse of something absurd. 2 prisoners, eyes wide with panic, are being led by torchlight toward the church. Each is barefoot, each is trembling, and each is about to face something known as trial by ordeal, a true medieval favourite where guilt is determined by how badly the universe wants you to suffer. Trial by ordeal comes in a few flavours, none of them good. There's the ordeal by fire, where you're told to carry a red-hot iron bar a certain distance. Your hands are then bandaged, and in a few days they're checked. If they've healed cleanly, you're innocent. If they've festered or blistered, yeah, not so much. Then there's the ordeal by water, which might be what these poor souls are in for. They're tied up and lowered into a river or pond. If they float, they're guilty, because floating means you've been rejected by the holy waters. If you sink, you're innocent, but also dead. Real win-win stuff. You shudder. A young man is led out next, hands shaking. He's repeating a prayer under his breath, but the priest looks bored. One of the guards chuckles as he tests the rope. You're pretty sure this town doesn't own enough physics books to realise that humans naturally float, especially terrified ones. But logic isn't the point here. Divine intervention is. Historically, trial by ordeal was used across medieval Europe, especially before secular courts took hold. And here's the twist. Sometimes clergy would manipulate results. If a local bishop liked you, maybe the iron wasn't as hot, or maybe your wounds were treated secretly to heal well enough by Judgment Day. God helps those whose families donate generously to the church after all. One fringe case in Iceland describes a man accused of stealing who chose ordeal by boiling water. He had to retrieve a stone from the bottom of a cauldron. His arm came out blistered like boiled sausage, but miraculously healed within days. Locals called it a sign. Historians call it suspicious. Your stomach twists. You know it's only a matter of time before someone decides you need to be judged by boiling water or maybe fire, or possibly bees. You've stopped ruling anything out. As the last accused is dunked, a ripple of tension passes through the courtyard. His body floats. Everyone nods grimly. Guilty. The rope is cut. The splash is the last thing you hear before the torchlight fades. You roll back onto your straw mat, pull your rag blanket tight, and try not to think about flutes, barrels, or your buoyancy. By the time the next day slithers its way into the dungeon, you've already accepted that mornings no longer mean safety or peace. They're just preludes to whatever humiliation or horror the local authorities have cooked up overnight. You wake up stiff, your back still aching from the shame flute ordeal, and your face sore from the cold iron that dug into your jaw. You'd like to believe there's a limit to the inventiveness of medieval punishment, but after hearing someone describe a metal pear, with the casual tone of someone discussing soup ingredients, you've given up on optimism. The guard enters again, no whistle this time, maybe even he's starting to find this routine dull. He tosses a crust of bread in your general direction and waits for you to finish chewing before he speaks. You're lucky, he says. No wheel, no water. But the magistrate says you talk too much, he smirks. So we're fixing that. Your mouth goes dry. They drag you out of your cell and down a different hallway this time, less damp, more ceremonial. You're taken to a wooden chair bolted to the floor in the centre of a dark room lit by flickering candles. In front of you, laid out neatly on a table, is a headpiece made entirely of iron, shaped like something out of a nightmare masquerade ball. This, dear unfortunate you, is the scold's bridle, also known as the brank, the gossip's mask, or the thing your enemies would invent if they hated the sound of your voice. It's an iron framework designed to wrap around the head like a cage, complete with a flat metal plate that fits into the mouth. On nicer models, that plate is smooth. On the not-so-nice ones, which you're about to experience, it's spiked or ridged, just enough to ensure that if you try to speak, you tear up your tongue. Originally, the bridle was used in parts of England and Scotland starting in the 16th century, but its roots dig deep into earlier traditions of public shaming and enforced silence. It was specifically reserved for nags, scolds, or common brawlers, in other words, mostly women, especially those who are outspoken, argumentative, or just unwilling to be silently miserable. The logic went, if you couldn't keep your mouth shut, they'd do it for you permanently if necessary. 2 assistants steady your head while the executioner, who's probably moonlighting as the town locksmith, carefully fits the metal frame around your skull. The bridle clinks shut with a finality that turns your breath shallow. The mouthplate forces your tongue down. You taste iron and old sweat. Your jaw aches instantly. You try to speak, to ask why, to argue, but the spike on the inside presses against your tongue with a warning jab. You stop. Outside, they parade you again. Of course they do. Public shame is always part of the recipe. As you're led through the streets, people glance up from their stalls. Some laugh, some grimace. One woman spits and mutters a prayer under her breath. Your vision blurs from tears you won't let fall, but the sunlight is still too bright, too warm for the moment. Your legs wobble under the iron's weight, and your scalp throbs from where the bridle presses against your temples. One historical account tells of a woman forced to wear a bridle for over 12 hours. Another was chained outside the church so the congregation could insult her as they passed by. In some cases, the bridle included a bell, because what's public shame without a soundtrack? Scholars argue whether these devices were used primarily as symbolic punishments, like warnings to others, or whether they saw regular grim use. The surviving examples, rusted but intact, suggest this wasn't just one blacksmith's cruel hobby. Dozens have been found, often near courthouse ruins or churches. Some are disturbingly decorative, with faces, horns, or twisted metal expressions, as if someone thought your torture gear should have personality. And here's your fringe detail for the night. In Germany, a similar punishment called the mask of shame was used, not always with pain, but with maximum embarrassment. One such mask was shaped like a pig's head, worn by someone accused of greed. Another resembled a donkey, for those deemed foolish. You weren't just punished, you were turned into a living metaphor.
Yep.
Back in the present, someone tosses a cabbage leaf that bounces off your shoulder. The kids are back. Why is it always the kids? Eventually the guards drag you to a wooden post and chain you there. Not long, just a few hours. Just long enough for the bridle to sink into your skull and remind you who's really in control. You're left to stand like a living warning sign, talk too much, end up like this. A few hours later they return to unfasten it. You've bitten your tongue at least twice and can't feel your jaw. The removal isn't gentle. When they pull the metal from your mouth, it scrapes your gums, leaving a trail of blood that quickly dries in the hot afternoon sun. You don't speak for the rest of the day, not out of fear, just because everything hurts. They put you back in the cell. The stone wall greets you like an old enemy. Across the corridor, a new prisoner's been tossed in. A young woman, barefoot, hair wild, muttering to herself. She catches your eye and flashes a crooked grin. "You'll be fine," she says, "unless they decide you're a witch." You don't answer. You fall asleep that night with a ringing in your ears and the phantom weight of iron still resting on your head. Your dreams are a swirl of fire, water and laughter that isn't yours. And tomorrow? Tomorrow they're filling the ducking stool. You don't even wait for the footsteps this time. You're already awake, sitting against the wall of your cell, listening to the stone drip and the distant creak of wood outside. Something's happening in the courtyard. You can hear splashes, laughter, a low chant. That kind of rhythm means only one thing in this place, and only somebody's about to get wet in the worst way imaginable. When the guard finally shows up, surprise, he doesn't even pretend to explain. "Bath time," he mutters, like you're a particularly disobedient sheepdog. You'll march through the halls, joints aching, mouth still raw from yesterday's bridle. Every step feels like a question you don't want answered. Outside the air is crisp, overcast sky, no warmth from the sun, and in the middle of the square, built over a large pond, is a tall wooden seesaw contraption balanced on a beam. One end has a wide flat seat with arm and ankle restraints. The other end is operated by rope and muscle. 2 guards already stand by, gleefully adjusting the pulley system. You don't need to ask, you already know. This is a ducking stool. and you're the main act. The ducking stool was the medieval version of a public correction system disguised as waterboarding theatre. Its most common targets? Scolds, gossips, witches, and any woman whose words or opinions annoyed someone powerful. Over the centuries, it became one of the more symbolic forms of discipline, mostly because it straddled the line between punishment and entertainment. In some towns, crowds actually paid to watch. You're forced into the chair, the wood is slick and cold, your ankles are strapped down, arms secured. There's no "would you like to plead your case" or "sign here to acknowledge your rights." The only legal procedure in this moment is a nod from the bailiff and then, creak, you're suddenly airborne. The world tips, your stomach drops before your body does. The chair swings out over the water and then, splash, you're underwater, entirely. It's not a dunk, not a polite dip. You're held down there for several long seconds, long enough for your lungs to start screaming. The water is icy, shockingly so, and full of weeds and dead leaves. Something brushes your ankle, hopefully just a fish. Maybe. Then you're yanked back up. You come up coughing, sputtering, gagging for air while the crowd lets out a half-hearted cheer. And then, before you can catch a full breath, down again. The rhythm begins. Up, down, gasp, submerge, over and over. The theory, if you can call it that, was to humiliate and cleanse the accused. For gossips, the water would cool their fiery tongues. For witches, well, this is where things get dark. Because you've heard the stories. If you're accused of witchcraft, the ducking stool becomes a test. Float, and you're guilty. Because the devil holds up his servants. Sink, and you're innocent. Because the holy water accepts you. Only problem? Sinking doesn't come with a rescue guarantee. This so-called trial by ducking became particularly popular in the 15th to 17th centuries, especially during witch hunting peaks. Entire towns would turn out to watch accused women, usually elderly or poor, be strapped to stools or tossed in tied up. The logic was flawless in the way that only the terminally superstitious can manage. Survival equals guilt, death equals purity. Classic lose-lose. In one documented case, a woman in East Anglia was ducked so many times in one day her body temperature plummeted and she had to be revived with brandy. The local magistrate insisted the test hadn't yet been conclusive. In another town, a stool snapped mid-test, and the woman, miraculously, escaped into the reeds, prompting an even more frenzied manhunt. Because if you survive injustice, obviously you're magic. There's also a fringe twist in some records. The ducking stool wasn't always over water. In France, similar devices were reportedly used to dunk women into vats of manure or public latrines. Cleansing through filth. The irony was either intentional or lost on everyone involved. Back in your own misery, you're hauled up one final time and left suspended, dripping above the pond. Your teeth are chattering so hard it feels like you'll crack a molar. Every part of your body feels wrung out. Your limbs tremble with exhaustion. Your thoughts are scattered, floating somewhere between panic and apathy. The crowd begins to thin. The guards decide you've been adequately reformed. They swing the arm back toward the platform and unbuckle you. Your legs barely hold up and you collapse to your knees on the wood. One of the guards shrugs. Not the worst we've seen. You're dragged, soaked and shivering, back to your cell. That night you lie curled up in a puddle of your own damp misery, listening to the wind outside and wondering what it takes to be forgotten. Because if the town loses interest in you, maybe they'll stop pulling you into their theatre of torment. Across the hall, the muttering woman speaks again. "You lasted longer than the last one," she says, with something almost like admiration. She screamed. You just gasped. You try to respond, but your jaw won't cooperate. You don't even remember falling asleep. When you wake next, there's a tray of bread and water in the corner, and a new guard watching you silently. He taps the bars once. "Magistrate says you're due for internal examination next," he says, with no emotion. You blink. "What kind of examination?" He shrugs. "Ever heard of a pear?" You have heard of a pear, but not the kind you eat. You don't eat the bread, you don't touch the water, you just sit there staring at the wall and trying not to picture a certain fruit-shaped object. But of course your brain is helpful like that. It keeps going there, filling in gaps you don't want filled. You've heard whispers, everyone in the dungeon has. Someone once screamed for hours after the pear. Another prisoner refused to sit for days, curling in the corner like a broken doll. The word anguish is in the name. You don't need a diagram. The guards come in silence this time. No taunts, no jokes. That might be the most terrifying part. They drag you not to the courtyard, not to the public stage, but to a different room, a quieter one. Stone walls, one narrow window, a wooden chair with leather straps, and on the table beside it an object that could be mistaken for a primitive tool, or a nightmare made solid, about the size of your fist, made of blackened iron, with a pear-like shape, rounded at the base and narrowing to a curved, tapered top. Along the sides, jagged petals curve inward, connected by a central screw mechanism. The pear of anguish. Also known as the choke pear, this little torture gadget was designed with a horrifying elegance. When inserted, yes, inserted, into a body cavity, we'll keep it vague for the sake of your remaining dignity, the device would be turned with a screw, causing the petals to open, slowly, irrevocably, causing stretching, tearing, and, well, anguish. Different types were allegedly made for different purposes, one for the mouth to silence, one for the rectum to punish sodomy, and one for the vagina to correct unchaste women or suspected witches. You wish that were hyperbole? It isn't. There's debate among scholars whether the pear was truly used in widespread practice or was more symbolic, a threat, a fear tactic. Most surviving examples are heavily ornate, suggesting they were more about psychological torment than frequent application. But honestly, even once is too many. The device in front of you is not decorative, it's cold utilitarian. The guard next to it wears gloves. You're strapped to the chair without ceremony, and the mere presence of the object is enough to reduce you to a trembling wreck. He holds it up, turns the screw once, twice, letting you watch the petals bloom. It opens like a mechanical flower, deliberate, precise, obscene, that you can't breathe. Your body is locked in a slow panic, cold sweat soaking the back of your shirt. Don't move, the guard mutters, as if you have a choice. They don't actually use it on you. Not this time. They let it hover. They let you feel its weight in the room, the inevitability of it, the message carved in every edge. We can, we might, we probably will, but not today. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe when we're bored again. After several minutes, or hours, time doesn't function properly here, they unstrap you, haul you upright, and drag you back to the cell like a sack of potatoes. Your legs barely move. Your mind has checked out completely, floating somewhere above your skull, watching all this unfold like it's happening to someone else. That's the real punishment, isn't it? The waiting, the knowing. The fact that they didn't use it this time doesn't bring comfort. It makes you sick with anticipation. You collapse on the straw mat and close your eyes. No dreams come, your brain is done entertaining you. Eventually voices filter through the corridor again, high-pitched, delighted, almost theatrical. Someone is singing, someone is playing a flute, a real one this time, not strapped to someone's chest. You lift your head. A new procession passes by your cell, and at the centre of it is a man, barefoot and bound, wearing a grotesque metal collar around his neck that connects to a rod pressing beneath his chin and another beneath his sternum, the heretic's fork. It's a lesser-known torture device, but elegant in its simplicity. A two-pronged metal rod, one end beneath the jaw, the other under the chest or collarbone, held in place by a neck strap. The concept is straightforward. Don't move your head at all, because if you do, the prongs drive into your throat or your sternum, and things get bloody fast. It doesn't kill you outright. It disciplines you. It forces stillness. It makes breathing a negotiation. The man being paraded now must have broken at least one taboo. Blasphemy, maybe, or heresy, or simply refusing to renounce a belief that someone else decided was inconvenient. In the Inquisition's golden years, heresy could mean almost anything, from translating the Bible to sneezing in church. You watch his face. His eyes are open wide, not blinking. His lips are cracked and slightly parted, probably because he hasn't dared to swallow in hours. A single drop of sweat runs down his cheek and collects on the metal collar, like rain sliding down a gutter. He passes by, followed by a pair of monks who chant softly, solemnly, as if they're not escorting a man toward either death or lifelong nerve damage. Just another Tuesday. The heretic's fork was used primarily by the church in its more aggressive justice phases, especially during the 13th to 16th centuries. A favourite among inquisitors, it left no external marks, just internal agony. That way the condemned could be brought to confession with their body unspoiled, because optics matter. The debate among historians here is whether the fork was a frontline tool or a final flourish. Some accounts describe it being worn for days, even weeks, making sleep impossible. Others suggest it was symbolic, used during transport, not punishment, but once again, whether it was used once or 1,000 times, it exists, and that alone is enough. You curl up again on your mat, shivering despite the warmth now creeping into the stone walls. Your body has become a catalogue of medieval shame, paraded, dunked, silenced and threatened. You wonder if there's a medal for surviving 4 days in the medieval justice system without confessing to anything you didn't do. Then again, give it one more day, and you just might start confessing to everything. Out of fear, out of exhaustion, or just to stop the parade of metal horrors. You close your eyes again. You try to remember the sound of birds, but all you hear is the metal hinge of the pear slowly opening. You dream of water again, cool and black, dragging you under, but this time you don't surface. The dream just fades to darkness, and then, abruptly, to the scent of roasting meat. Not the comforting kind. No herbs, no smoke curling from a hearth. This is raw and sickening, like grease mixed with something burnt that shouldn't be burning. You wake with a jolt and immediately regret it. Every joint protests. Your mouth tastes like rust, and your lips feel cracked from where the bridle cut them days ago. Maybe it was days, maybe it was a year. Time here is stretchy and mean. Footsteps approach, you don't even bother standing. They'll drag you either way. This time when they open your cell, there's a different energy. The guards don't look bored, they look excited. One even smiles, which is somehow worse than his usual scowl. You're hauled to your feet, wrists bound, and led outside into the biting wind. The sky is overcast again, like it's trying to smother the town with a wet pillow. The crowd is already waiting. At the centre of the square sits a peculiar setup, a wooden beam balanced over a pit, similar to the ducking stool, but this isn't for water. This one has a figure already seated on it, legs tied, hands bound, a look of utter despair frozen on his face. A sharp wedge of wood runs the length of the beam, forming an inverted triangle, wide at the base, narrow and painfully pointed at the top. The seated man isn't just sitting, he's straddling it. You know what this is? The Spanish donkey. They make you watch before they strap you down. It's part of the ritual, maybe. A warning or an appetizer. The man ahead of you moans, low and constant, a sound that seems to echo from his ribcage rather than his throat. Weights hang from his ankles, stretching him downward, deepening the contact between his body and the sharpened wooden edge. Then it's your turn. You're pushed toward the contraption. The wood is stained from use, dark and sticky in places. They hoist you up, not gently, and lower you onto the ridge. It slices into your inner thighs immediately. Pain shoots through your spine and down your legs. They tie your wrists behind your back, and then, just to drive the point home, they fasten a stone weight to your ankles. Gravity takes over. The Spanish donkey was used throughout Europe from the late medieval into the early modern period, particularly by inquisitorial courts and rogue town militias. Simple in construction, it relied on anatomy and physics to inflict maximum discomfort with minimum effort. No blood at first, no screaming necessarily, just the slow, relentless pressure of a wedge slicing into soft tissue, turning pain into endurance theatre. The wedge digs deeper. Your body twitches involuntarily. Your muscles clench, then spasm. The longer you're there, the more your brain starts to separate. You feel as though you're floating somewhere above the pain, watching it happen to someone else, but the sharp wood keeps calling you back minute by minute. There are no questions, no interrogators, no confess and it will stop. That's not the goal today. This is punishment, plain and brutal, a reminder that you're nothing more than a body to them, and your body is theirs to destroy slowly. According to one fringe tale from Spain, this device was used on a suspected heretic who allegedly endured it for 3 straight days, rotated off and on with breaks to prevent death too soon. He was later released, limp and hollow-eyed, and reportedly never spoke again. There's no real scholarly agreement on whether the Spanish donkey originated in Spain or just picked up the name there. Some historians suggest it was a cousin to other riding the rail punishments used in France and Germany, where offenders were forced to straddle narrow beams or rails, often while being paraded through town. But this version, stationary, vertical, intimate, is something else entirely. Your thighs are going numb. That would be a blessing if not for the ache creeping up your back. You try to shift your weight, to lean slightly forward, but the rope around your wrists tightens, and the sharp wood answers you with a sharper throb. The crowd murmurs around you. Some laugh. Some look away. One boy asks, will it cut him in half? And his mother hushes him, though not unkindly. After what feels like hours but might be minutes, the guards finally untie you. The pain doesn't stop when they lift you. No, it flares anew, white hot, like your skin is being ripped away. You collapse immediately, unable to walk. They don't carry you, they drag you. Back to the cell, back to the stone. You lie on your side, curled in a way that makes breathing slightly more tolerable. Blood trickles down one thigh. You're not sure if it's from a tear or from where the rope rubbed your ankles raw. Maybe both. You fall asleep at some point, or pass out. The line is blurry. When you come to, it's evening. Dim light filters through the slit in the wall. The smell of roasted meat is gone, replaced by smoke and something chemical, like hot iron or scorched leather. You try to sit up but can't. Your body says no, loudly. Outside, a new noise fills the air. A rhythmic clanking, steady and metallic. Like a hammer on a drum, you crawl to the bars, grimacing through every motion and peer out. In the courtyard, someone is being prepared for branding. You know this one. Everyone does. Cropping and branding. The classic tag and release program for criminals too mild to kill, but too dangerous to go unmarked. They take a knife to your ears or nose, or both, and follow it up with a white-hot iron, pressed to your skin until the hiss drowns your scream. One man branded with an F for felon, another with a V for vagabond. One poor soul had both ears cropped and a cross seared into his forehead for blasphemy. He smiled through it. Nobody knew why. Maybe he was already gone inside. Branding was popular for centuries, especially in England and colonial Europe. It was a bureaucrat's dream. Painful, permanent, and easily visible. You could spot a branded criminal from across the town square, which made it easier for guards to keep tabs, and for mobs to know who to throw things at. There are stories of people using grease or animal fat to minimise the burn. Others begged blacksmiths to brand them quickly, deep and fast. Some branded themselves beforehand to avoid public punishment, controlling the scar if not the story, but no one ever forgets the smell. The branding iron hits the fire now, glows red, then orange, then white. You lie back down, eyes closed, and whisper something between a prayer and a curse. You hope they forget you tomorrow. They don't forget you. You'd hope that by now they'd be bored, that your willingness to groan quietly and not fight back might make you less fun. But no, the guards are smiling when they come for you the next morning, and that's never a good sign. One of them even pats your shoulder like your old pals heading off to a garden party. You're too sore to resist, too numb to care, and too afraid to ask what's next. You've learned that in this place the question is always worse than the answer. The walk is longer this time, down a corridor you haven't seen before. Walls darker, floor uneven, the kind of place where the stone itself seems to be holding its breath. At the end is a heavy wooden door with iron straps and a keyhole large enough to peek through. The guard fumbles with the keys while the other just watches you, the same way someone watches a roast turn on a spit. Inside, the room is dim and strangely quiet. There's no jeering crowd this time, no priest chanting, just the low hum of a brazier in the corner, and the unmistakable stench of rot. In the middle of the room is a wooden table, beside it a metal cage, and inside the cage, a rat. Your stomach drops. The guard sees your reaction and chuckles. Ah, he says, so you've heard of this one? Yes, you have. Rat torture. You're strapped to the table, flat on your back, arms and legs tied down, no chance to squirm, no angle to shift your weight. Your midsection is bare, and your skin goosebumps with the chill in the air and the anticipation in your bones. Then the brazier is brought closer. The rat, still pacing restlessly in its cage, is scooped up and shoved into a large metal bowl, which is then turned upside down and strapped tightly to your stomach. There's only one direction for the rat to go, down. The brazier is placed on top of the metal bowl. Heat builds fast. The rat panics. You feel it scrabbling inside the container, frantic claws against your skin, its body slamming into the walls of its prison. The metal gets hotter. The animal gets wilder. Then it begins. It starts slow, just scraping, desperate pawing. Then a sudden sharp jolt of pain as the claws dig in, piercing flesh. You scream. The rat, driven by heat and terror, begins to burrow. It has nowhere else to run. You are now the only available escape route. Historically, this punishment wasn't just real, it was deliberate cruelty dressed in efficiency. Rat torture was used by various cultures across time, from ancient China to 17th century South America to Europe in its darkest corners. The Dutch reportedly used it during their brutal colonial reigns. The Spanish Inquisition was rumoured to have had a fondness for it. The idea was simple: take a creature naturally inclined to chew and panic, trap it against the human body and apply pressure until the animal did what nature designed it to do. Some variants didn't involve heat at all. In certain French records, starving rats were sewn into clothing or sealed in cages tied to limbs, left to gnaw through whatever was in their path. One tale tells of a rat hidden in a man's boot sealed in with hot wax. Another mentions rats poured into a helmet, placed on the victim's head, then shaken until they fought their way out, through scalp, bone and brain. The fringe detail? In one disturbing twist of history, rats were also used in medical experiments centuries later to test pain thresholds and digestive effects. The boundary between punishment and science was disturbingly porous. Back in your personal nightmare, the rat inside your torture bowl is losing its mind. You feel every twitch, every scratch, every bite. Your screams echo off the stone walls and disappear into the ceiling beams like prayers gone unanswered. Eventually the guards remove the bowl. You can't see what's inside, don't want to. All you know is your abdomen is slick with blood, raw from shallow wounds and deeper gouges. You're unstrapped, barely able to move and dragged back to your cell with shaking limbs and a growing fever. They don't speak to you. They never need to. That night you curl in the corner of your cell, rocking slightly, body pulsing with pain. You want to sleep, but every time you close your eyes, you feel those tiny claws all over again. You start to understand why some prisoners begged for beheading. A clean death. A certain end. This is like being eaten in slow motion by the century itself. Across the hall, the woman, the one who always seems to be awake, leans closer to her bars and whispers, "They only did that to me once. After that, I learned to stop blinking too loud." You want to laugh. Instead, you cough. Blood in your throat. In the morning, the cell door creaks open again. The same two guards. But they're not smiling this time. No, now they're carrying feathers. Feathers and a bucket. The bucket smells like tar. You close your eyes. Here we go again. Tarring and feathering is one of those punishments people like to joke about in cartoons, but it was real, and it was brutal. A popular form of mob justice, it didn't kill outright, but humiliated spectacularly and left lasting damage. First you're stripped, then you're covered, painted really, with hot tar, not boiling but close enough to blister and burn. Then while your skin is still sticky and your dignity bleeding on the floor, they toss handfuls of feathers onto you. You become a creature of shame, half man, half goose, all pain. It was used for thieves, tax collectors, political enemies, anyone the public wanted to turn into a walking joke. It wasn't a court sentence usually. It was a statement, a warning. The guards do it fast. You're held down, the tar poured over your back and chest, the feathers sticking as soon as they touch. You want to scream, but your throat is hoarse from earlier. The heat is unbearable, the stickiness worse, the humiliation infinite. Once feathered, you're shoved outside, barefoot, stumbling. People come out to watch. Children laugh. One man pretends to cluck at you like a chicken. Another throws breadcrumbs. The guards don't even try to hold them back. And still, somehow this isn't the worst of it. The worst part comes later, when the tar cools and hardens, when it adheres to your skin like second flesh, when someone decides to scrape it off with knives. But not tonight. Tonight, you're thrown back into your cell like refuse. The feathers stick to the straw bedding. Your skin blisters. Your mind frays a little more. You wonder how many kinds of pain exist in this place. You wonder how many you have left. You don't sleep that night. Not because you don't want to, not because your mind isn't begging for unconsciousness, but because every inch of your body feels wrapped in a gah. The tar's still there, hardened into an itchy burning shell. The feathers stick to your wounds. When you shift, even slightly, the edges crack and peel against your skin. You try to stay still, but even breathing feels like sandpaper down your back. You've become a molting bird from hell, one that screeches every time it moves and probably won't be flying anytime soon. At some point you must doze off. Your brain gives out before your body does, and when you wake, you're no longer in your cell. You're lying on something flat and cold. Your hands are tied above your head. It takes a moment to register the new surroundings. Stone floor, a rack of tools against the wall. the smell of sweat, leather, and something coppery and old in you. You try to move your legs. No luck. You're bound there too. Something squeaks, a door, a pulley. You don't get time to wonder. One of the guards steps into view, but he's not the usual one. This guy is older, thinner, and wearing a leather apron that looks permanently stained. His hands are red. You don't know if it's from the tar or from something else. He doesn't speak. He just points to a pair of saws hanging from the wall. One is short and sharp, like something you'd use to cut firewood. The other is long, obscenely long, with wooden handles at either end. You suddenly understand the position you're in. They're not tying you down to hold you still. They're tying you down so they can turn you upside down. And they do. Slowly, carefully, like they're setting up a stage. Now you're dangling by your ankles, head just inches from the ground, blood rushing to your skull. You feel your heartbeat in your ears. Your arms sway uselessly above your head. Everything is spinning slightly. You're not sure if it's the blood flow or the horror setting in. They bring out the saw, sawing a man in half. It's one of the oldest, most grisly methods of execution, though it walks that fine line between punishment and public horror show. The preferred technique was to hang the victim upside down so the blood would pool in the brain and keep them conscious longer. Then, starting at the groin, the executioner, or executioners, sometimes working in teams like some macabre lumberjack duo, would begin sawing downward, slowly, carefully, through flesh, bone, cartilage, and thanks to that handy blood supply to the head, the victim could remain conscious well into the process. Not always, but often enough to haunt the memory of anyone watching. There's a debate, of course. Some scholars argue this wasn't widely used. Others insist it was more rumour than regular practice, something whispered by invaders or cited in exaggerated accounts of barbarian justice. But a handful of records, mostly in Eastern Europe and the Middle East, describe it with enough detail to make you want to stop reading halfway through. In one Ottoman-era report, 2 spies were caught and punished this way for leaking information to foreign forces. The punishment was public, meant to terrify anyone thinking of betrayal. In other cases, the victim was cut entirely in half. In the most horrific ones, the sawing stopped halfway and the person was left to die slowly, screaming for hours, sometimes days. You're not sure what category you fall into. The guards don't immediately start cutting, they just let you hang there. Let your imagination work against you. Let the blood pound in your face until you feel like your eyes might burst. It's a weird kind of mercy, this delay. Maybe they're waiting for orders. Maybe they're just building suspense. Maybe they don't actually intend to do it. After what feels like hours, they untie your feet and lower you to the floor. You collapse in a heap, too dizzy to stand, too drained to ask questions. The saw remains untouched on the wall. A warning then, not a punishment. Not yet. They drag you again back to your cell. The relief of not being sawn in half lasts exactly 3 minutes. Because waiting for you in the corner of your cell is a new accessory. A little gift. It's a collar. You've seen collars before, not for pets, not here. You know what this is. The iron collar, or as it was sometimes called in medieval records, the penance ring. It's thick, circular, lined with spikes on the inside, not long enough to pierce the skin deeply, but just enough to cause constant pressure, to bruise, to threaten. You're locked into it without ceremony. It presses into your neck with a soft crunch of old bruises. Every swallow hurts. Every movement jabs another spike just close enough to your arteries to keep things interesting. This collar wasn't just torture, it was a lifestyle. Used throughout the Middle Ages, it served both as punishment and as a public mark of shame. Some were connected to chains on walls, limiting movement. Others were worn day and night as a slow, grinding form of behavioural correction. Monks, prisoners, heretics, anyone who needed to be reminded of their place might end up in one. One account from 15th century France tells of a monk who wore a collar for a full year after violating his vow of silence. In another, a woman accused of adultery was forced to wear hers in church every Sunday while kneeling at the altar for the entire service. People would come by and pretend to pray beside her, just to get a closer look. Some collars had bells attached. Others were shaped to dig into the jaw, causing speech problems and disfigurement over time. The most ornate were used in noble courts, because humiliation, like everything else, had a flair for the dramatic. You lie back against the stone wall, collar tight, wounds raw, the faint scent of tar still clinging to you like shame. You wonder what it would feel like to float again. Not in the ducking pond, but in a real river. One with sunlight, one with an end. The collar doesn't let you sleep. It doesn't even let you rest properly. Any time your neck shifts, even slightly, the dull pressure of the spikes turns sharp. It's not constant agony, like the Spanish donkey or the rat, but it's a steady sort of misery, like a tight headache that's learned how to grow teeth. You try to find a position that doesn't dig into your skin, but there isn't one. Even breathing too deeply makes the iron bite. Eventually, you give up on rest and lie flat on the floor, unmoving, staring at the wall. You're so still you start to hear things, tiny noises you usually ignore. The creak of water pipes somewhere above, the steady drip from the ceiling crack, the scuffle of rats in the corners. It's almost peaceful, in a bleak end-of-your-rope kind of way. Then the silence breaks. A rattle of keys, the door opens, and this time they don't drag you. They escort you. 2 guards, different ones, take you by the arms and guide you up the hallway with something that could almost be called respect. Not kindness exactly, just a strange, stiff formality, like you're being taken to a job interview or a marriage tribunal. You're brought into a stone chamber lit by dozens of candles. It's the warmest room you've been in since arriving. There's a wooden chair in the middle and a table beside it. Laid out on the table, a long rod, thin and curved slightly at the end. You know better by now than to ask what it's for. They sit you in the chair and begin strapping your arms to the rests, your ankles to the legs. The collar remains. One of the guards looks at it, nods with approval, and then tightens it slightly. A little bonus misery. Then the man enters. He's dressed better than the guards. Robe, leather gloves, a polished belt knife hanging from his hip. His face is clean-shaven. He looks like a professor who got lost and decided to try his hand at torture. "Speak when spoken to," he says. His voice is calm, controlled. You can tell he enjoys this, but not in the laughing villain way. This is a man who finds meaning in his work. "I'm here to administer the heretic's fork," he says. "You're familiar with it, I assume?" You nod, just barely, not wanting to press against the collar's spikes, but it's enough. "Good," he says. "Then we don't need a lesson." Still, he gives you one. He lifts the fork from the table. 2 sharp prongs jut from either end of the metal rod, one pointing up, the other down. It's not long, just enough to rest between your chin and chest when worn. The prongs are dull-tipped but unforgiving. Once strapped on, you won't be able to move your head without puncturing yourself. No nodding, no dozing off, no flinching, just absolute stillness. You close your eyes as he fastens it. Leather straps tighten behind your neck. The bottom prong rests just above your collarbone, the top one snug beneath your jaw. Already your muscles start to quiver from the tension of holding yourself perfectly still. "Confess," he says simply. You shake your head by instinct, then stop yourself, wincing. The upper prong presses into the soft underside of your chin. Not enough to break skin, just enough to warn up. The man doesn't press, he just nods to the guards and leaves the room. You're left like that, alone, in stillness. Time crawls. The fork is less painful than other devices you've endured, but that's what makes it worse. This one doesn't need violence. It uses your own body against itself. After 10 minutes, your neck starts to ache. After 30, your shoulders tremble. You want to stretch, roll your head, do anything to relieve the tension, but you can't. You try to shift your eyes toward the doorway. Bad idea. The slight tilt of your head draws blood from your chin. Just a droplet. Warm. Immediate. Historically, the heretic's fork was a favourite of the Inquisition. It left no visible scars, which meant more deniability. It forced prisoners to remain upright and alert, often for days at a time. You weren't allowed to sleep. You weren't allowed to speak. Some forks had inscriptions like "I recant" etched into the metal, a constant reminder of what you should be saying. In one Italian case from the 1500s, a priest was forced to wear the fork for 3 days straight, allowed only minimal food and water. On the second day, he broke his own jaw trying to escape the pressure. He survived, but stopped speaking altogether. They called that a success. The debate among historians is whether these stories are inflated, urban legends dressed up as warnings. But then, forks like the one now stabbing gently at your chin sit in museums all over Europe. Some are small, some are barbed. A few have been clearly customised for children. Yes, children. You last maybe an hour before they return. There's no ceremony in the removal, just a quick unbuckling, a pause to let the fork drop, and then the sharp sting as your neck muscles finally give out. You collapse forward. The collar spikes bite again. You cry out briefly before catching yourself. Back in your cell, they leave you with a crust of bread and water. You don't move for a long time, but eventually something shifts outside. A strange sound. Bells. You crawl slowly, groaning, toward the bars and peer out. There's a commotion in the square, but not the usual kind. No screaming, no executions, just music. Sort of off-key, horrible, rhythmic in the worst way. A procession comes into view and your eyes widen. A man is being marched through the town, dressed in what can only be described as medieval absurdity. He wears a collar made of metal flutes, actual playable pipes that clang and ring when he walks. His hands are cuffed into position like he's mid-performance. A sign on his chest reads, "Offender of the Ear." Another shame flute. You've seen one up close, but this is different. This one's ornate, ridiculous. Someone's added bells to his shoes. He walks with a wobble that suggests he's been doing this a while. He stops in front of a crowd and gives a half bow. The crowd boos. Someone tosses a potato. He doesn't react. This is what happens when public punishment becomes performance art. And deep down, some part of you knows that could be you again. Tomorrow, you spend the night thinking about the man in the flute collar, the way he bowed, the way he didn't even flinch when the potato hit him square in the chest. There was something horrifyingly calm about him, like someone who'd finally accepted that he'd become the village's walking punchline. A one-man symphony of disgrace. You wonder how long it takes to get there, mentally, emotionally, where shame becomes background noise and the world's laughter just folds into your routine like rain or wind. You're not far off yourself. Sleep isn't really an option, not with the iron collar still digging into your throat every time you lean your head even slightly. You prop yourself against the wall, arms crossed, trying not to move. Eventually your body drags you into a half-sleep filled with strange dreams, people with instruments for faces, a choir of rats, a monk reading sins off your skin like sheet music. When you wake, someone's already at the bars. It's a new guard, younger than the others. He doesn't speak, just unlocks the door and gestures with a kind of bored authority. You know the drill by now. You stand, slowly, your body cracks like old wood. The tar from days ago still clings to parts of your skin. The feathers are mostly gone, but a few remain, sticking to the inside of your shirt like bad memories. They lead you outside, not to the square this time, not to the water or the whipping post or the saw room. They lead you to a narrow wooden structure you've seen before but never really noticed, almost like a storage shed but lower, with thick doors and smoke-blackened hinges. The door creaks open. Inside is a cabinet. Not the kind for dishes. You've heard the name whispered with dread. The Iron Maiden. It stands taller than a man, shaped like a coffin but more theatrical. The outside is decorated with religious imagery, saints, crosses, even a small halo etched into the metal near the top. The inside, though, that's where the real art begins. Lining the inner walls of the Maiden are metal spikes, each about 5 inches long, tapering to cruel points. They're spaced just so, not meant to puncture vital organs outright, but to pierce flesh, muscle, nerves, enough to wound, not enough to kill, at least not immediately. The guards position you in front of it, hands still bound, and for a moment, you consider trying to speak. Say something witty. Beg. Cry. Anything. But your voice doesn't work. Your throat is too dry, your pride too mangled. You just stand there, blinking as they open the Maiden and gesture inside. You step in. The floor is narrow. The space barely wide enough for your shoulders. Your body is forced into position. Spine against cold iron, hands pressed to your sides. You feel the first pricks of the spikes just resting against your arms and ribs, like fingers testing you. Then the door begins to close. A second guard helps push it slowly until the space around you tightens. The spikes dig in, not deep, not yet, but every breath makes them shift against you. When the door finally seals with a clang, you're in total darkness. The metal presses against your chest. The spike at the base of your skull flirts with your scalp. You can't move, not a twitch. You're a needlepoint project made of skin and terror. Here's where things get murky. Some historians argue that the Iron Maiden is mostly myth, a product of 18th century imagination retrofitted into medieval lore. There's little to no evidence of its use in Europe during the actual Middle Ages. Most of the maidens we see in museums are reconstructions or propaganda pieces, part torture instrument, part performance prop, designed to evoke fear, not necessarily to be used. But fear is its own punishment, and some accounts, shaky, partial, deeply unsettling, suggest versions of the maiden did exist. In Germany, a shrine of judgment was found in a noble's estate, containing a wooden chamber lined with sharp nails. In Italy, a box of penance was described as being used to punish clergy who disobeyed their orders. Whether or not these were iron maidens as we picture them, they shared the same DNA: confinement, sharp edges, humiliation. There's also the problem of intent. Even if the full Iron Maiden wasn't widely used, the idea of it was real enough to scare people. And if it could scare, it could control. In a time where punishment was as much about display as it was about pain, fear itself became a tool. Back in your suffocating little world of iron and blood, the pain creeps in slowly. Not searing, not yet, just relentless. A pressure here, a prick there. One spike presses into your thigh with every breath, another teases your spine. If you sag, they dig deeper. If you try to stand straighter, your neck hits the top arc. There's no winning here, only endurance. Time passes without shape. Minutes stretch like hours. You try counting, 100 breaths, 200. Eventually you lose track and you start to hallucinate. You hear voices outside the maiden, none of them real. Some taunt you, others pray. One tells you a joke in Latin and you laugh even though you don't understand a word. That's when you realise your mind is unravelling, slowly, like a thread being pulled from a sleeve. At some point you feel a movement. The maiden opens, you collapse forward, limp and broken, barely able to catch yourself on your knees. You expect the guards to mock you, but they don't. They just pick you up like laundry and carry you back to the cell. It's the first time anyone's carried you since this all began. They don't say anything, just close the door behind you with the usual thud. Your body is bleeding in places, but not fatally. You won't die from this. Not yet. You lie on the stone floor and think of coffins, of saints with hollow eyes, of metal halos, and somewhere far away in the city a bell rings. Tomorrow is another punishment. You don't wonder what it will be anymore. You just wonder how long it'll take. Your body stops keeping track of days. It's too hard now with all the punishments blending into each other, like muddy water. Iron scraping skin, fire kissing flesh. Humiliation laced into every breath. You don't even flinch when the door opens anymore. You just look up, expressionless, like a child expecting a spoonful of something awful. The guards barely bother with words. They nod, you stand, slowly, and they lead you away. That's the rhythm now. You wake up sore, you get punished, you come back more sore. Repeat until broken. This time they don't bind you. That's different. They just walk beside you down a different corridor, one that smells less like rot and more like old wood and smoke. You catch faint traces of meat. Burning hair. It's not a good smell. Definitely not something anyone should associate with food. You come out into a stone chamber, not unlike the one that held the Iron Maiden. But this room is dominated by a large hollow statue of a bull. It stands on a platform, slightly raised, its bronze surface polished and gleaming under torchlight. It would almost be beautiful, if not for the open hatch in its side and the grill beneath its belly. The brazen bull. The name hits your stomach like a punch. You've heard the stories, everyone has. It's the kind of punishment so terrible it sounds like something out of legend, but there it is, real, solid, waiting. They bring you closer, slowly, deliberately. One of the guards gestures to the open hatch in the bull's ribcage. You're meant to go inside, and you do, because what's the alternative? Inside, the space is tight, curved and metallic, just large enough to curl up in. The walls are cold, but already beginning to warm from the fire they've lit beneath it. Your skin sticks to the bronze. Your breath echoes strangely, bouncing back at you in a distorted mimicry. The air already smells like copper and heat. The hatch slams shut behind you with a metallic finality that echoes in your teeth. And then it starts. Heat. Not instantly scalding, not yet. Just rising, slowly, purposefully. The bull's belly turns into a slow-cooking oven, and you're the main course. Every breath you take gets hotter. Your sweat turns to steam, the metal under you begins to sting, and worst of all, the sound. The brazen bull was a marvel of cruelty, designed not just to kill, but to perform. Created, at least according to legend, by a Greek inventor named Perillos, for the tyrant Phalaris of Sicily, the bull was engineered with a system of pipes and acoustic tubes. The idea? When a person screamed inside the bull, their cries would travel through these tubes and emerge from the bull's mouth sounding like the bellow of an animal. The more you suffered, the more realistic the performance. Death by theatre. Some scholars argue the invention was too elaborate to be widely used, more a mythical warning than a routine punishment. Others insist that examples of similar torture devices exist across the Mediterranean world, and that the Romans in particular were quite fond of execution with flair. There's a legend that the first person to die in the bull was its creator, Perillus himself, locked inside by Phalaris as a kind of twisted product test. If true, it's one of history's darkest instances of be careful what you invent. Inside the bull, your own body begins to betray you. Sweat pours into your eyes. Your skin burns where it touches the floor. You try not to scream, not to give them the satisfaction, but soon the pain takes over. You cry out, loud, hoarse, animalistic. The metal distorts the sound. You hear it echo through the bull's mouth, warped and deepened. And there it is. The bellow. Your own agony transformed into the sound of a dying beast. You scream again, this time involuntarily, as your thigh presses into the hottest part of the floor. You try to shift, but there's nowhere to go. The heat has wrapped around you like a second skin. The air itself is starting to taste sharp, like you're breathing blades. It doesn't last forever. Eventually, they open the hatch. You spill out like a rag doll, blistered and half delirious. The room spins. You're not dead somehow, just cooked at a low setting. Your skin is red, tender, peeling in places. One of the guards has to cover his nose as he hauls you upright. You don't walk back. You limp. Every step stings, but you make it. Back in the cell, you collapse without ceremony. Your entire body throbs. You don't even bother curling up. You just lie there, limbs akimbo, cheek pressed to the cold stone. Hours pass, maybe more. You drift in and out, half conscious, half hallucinating. At one point, you think you hear music again. The shame flute man still marching. Or maybe it's your own blood pulsing in your ears. And then, another sound. A clang. Not your door, but the one across the hall. Someone's being taken. You lift your head just enough to see it's the woman from the opposite cell. The one who always talks. She's shouting now, fighting. It takes 2 guards to hold her. She spits at one and kicks the other. Her feet are bare, her face bloodied, but her voice is strong. "No confession," she yells. "Not for your lies." They ignore her, of course. Drag her down the hall. You hear her yelling all the way out to the courtyard, where her voice rises one last time, and then stops. Silence. You don't know if she's dead or broken. Either way, she's not coming back. The next morning, they bring you a cup of broth instead of water. You don't trust it. You drink it anyway. The broth is salty, thin, and almost too hot to swallow, but you drink it anyway. Every drop is the first warm thing you've had in days, and it slides down your throat like forgiveness. You hold the cup for a long time after it's empty, hands trembling, letting the heat soak into your fingers. You pretend it's tea, pretend you're sitting in a quiet room by a fire somewhere, wrapped in a blanket, reading poetry instead of tallying your injuries like prison beads. It doesn't last. Nothing ever does here. The guards show up not long after. No words, they just look at you and nod, and you get up before they can touch you. There's a kind of resignation that settles in the body like fog, dull and absolute. You shuffle along beside them, legs aching, skin tender where the bull scorched you. You wonder how many layers of yourself are left. Not emotionally, literally. How much of your skin remains unbruised, unblistered, untouched. They take you to the same chamber they used for the Iron Maiden, but this time the centerpiece isn't theatrical or elaborate. No saints carved into metal, no elaborate acoustics, just a wooden post stained dark with years of tears and blood and a small box beside it that buzzes faintly. You recognize it instantly. Everyone does. It's the flaying knife. There are some punishments that carry their own aura. You don't need to see them in action to feel their weight. Flaying, removing the skin from a living body, has that kind of reputation. It exists on a level beyond pain. It's not just about punishing the body, it's about erasing it, making the flesh itself the crime. A full-body confession, signed in agony. You're brought to the post and tied in place, arms up, chest exposed. Your tunic is already shredded from previous punishments, so they don't even bother removing it. Just slice it open down the front and toss the scraps aside. You watch the flayer approach. He doesn't look like a monster. That's the worst part. He looks like a tailor. Calm, methodical, dressed in a leather apron carrying a small curved blade so sharp it glints even in this dim light. He starts with your upper arm. The first cut is shallow, clean, more pressure than pain. Then he slides the knife beneath the skin and pulls upward, slow and practiced. You feel your body tense as the outermost layer of yourself is peeled back like the rind of a fruit. You scream. Of course you do. You scream until your throat gives out, and then you just sound like screaming, raspy, broken, half wail, half gurgle. The flayer continues. Historically, flaying was one of the most horrific punishments ever devised, and one of the oldest. Ancient Assyrians were fond of it, particularly for rebels and traitors. Skinned enemies were sometimes nailed to city walls as a warning. The medieval world inherited that cruelty and refined it, not always for executions, but as a long, slow lesson. You didn't have to die to be flayed, you just had to be unlucky. One infamous case from 13th century England described a man flayed for striking a nobleman's son. They started at the shoulders, worked down the arms, then across the back. He lived. Barely. But spent the rest of his life in a monastery, wrapped in bandages, claiming to see angels in candlelight. There are debates, of course. Some historians argue that flaying alive was more of a threat than a regular practice, that most flayings were post-mortem, symbolic gestures to dishonour a corpse. But others cite detailed records, execution logs, torture guides, even just religious texts that suggest otherwise. Wherever the truth lands, the pain remains unimaginable. Back in your current nightmare, the flayer moves from your shoulder to your back. The knife slips beneath your skin again, separating flesh with disturbing ease. You can feel the warmth of your own blood trickling down your spine, soaking into your waistband. At some point you pass out. There's no graceful fade. 1 second you're biting your lip hard enough to taste copper, and the next the world goes black. When you wake, you're in your cell again, wrapped. That's new. Someone has bandaged your arms and a back clumsily, but with enough care to keep you from bleeding out. You lie on your stomach, breathing shallowly, every movement sending sharp sparks of pain through your skinless patches. You remember stories of martyrs, saints who were flayed for their beliefs, then rose glowing with divine light. You don't feel holy. You feel flammable. Time moves strangely and you drift in and out, your body sweating through the wrappings, sticking to the floor. Once a rat creeps near you. You don't move, it sniffs you, decides against chewing and leaves. Eventually the door opens again. You groan, you can't help it. Just walking this time, one guard says, as if that's meant to be reassuring. They help you up slowly. Your back sears with fire at the first stretch, but you stay upright. They take you outside. The sun blinds you. You haven't seen it in days, maybe weeks. It's warm on your face, and for a moment you forget you're a flayed, broken shell. You just feel sunlight, real golden sunlight. And then you see the contraption. A rat cage again, but this one isn't for your stomach. It's strapped to your chest. You're not entirely sure what's happening until they pull out a torch, light it, and hold it near the base of the cage. Another rat, another burrowing, but this time they're not aiming for your belly. They're aiming higher. You scream again, hoarse, weak in disbelief. Then it stops. They open the cage. The rat's gone berserk but hasn't broken skin, just scratched. A warning maybe, or an experiment, or boredom. You collapse. They don't even bother dragging you, they just let you crawl. Back in your cell you lie face down, afraid to move. Across the hall her cell is still empty. You realise then that you haven't cried once, and now finally you do. There are no tears left the next morning. Your body aches in too many directions at once to even process grief. Pain is the air now. Every breath, every shift, every inch of fabric clinging to your raw back like betrayal. You've stopped cataloguing the injuries. You've stopped guessing what day it is. You've stopped asking why. Somewhere deep in the marrow of your exhaustion, the question has flipped. It's not why are they doing this anymore. It's why are you still here? The door opens. You don't look up, you don't have to. You can feel the presence like a chill in your bones. This time they don't strap you or drag you or chain you to a stake. They help you to your feet, surprisingly gentle, as if you're made of something precious, or at least something fragile enough to break with the wrong kind of handling. You can't stand straight. The flayed skin on your back won't allow it. So you walk hunched, bent like an old monk carrying an invisible sin. They take you outside again, not to the square, but to the village edge, where the land starts to dip toward muddy pastures and tired trees. Waiting there, already prepared, is a wooden post. Just one, plain. Behind it, a short pile of ash, leftovers from someone else. Next to the post is a barrel of sticky black pitch. Tar. You freeze. But this isn't the feathers again. That was comedy. This is something slower, crueler. The pitch is boiling, slow cooked overnight until it's thick and clings like guilt. A wooden spoon rests inside it, warped by the heat, the handle charred at the edges. Your shirt is stripped off. Again. You offer no resistance. The first ladleful of tar hits your chest like molten grief. You scream, not out of surprise anymore, but because you have to. Your body demands it. The pain is so instant, so complete, it rips the scream out of you like a tooth. It runs down your chest, trails across your stomach, sticking in place like a second blistering skin. Another ladle, then another. Your entire torso becomes a map of pain, thickened and darkened. The tar clings to your flayed patches, coating the raw nerves with an inferno of cruelty. It's not just the heat, it's the weight. It drags on you, it smothers. Then comes the branding iron. Because why stop at just one agony? This one is shaped like a simple letter, T for thief, or B for blasphemer, or V for vagrant. No one tells you which. It's pressed into your left pectoral like a stamp of ownership. You smell yourself burn, the pitch bubbles. You pass out. When you wake, you're lying face up on a plank still outside. The sky is overcast now, a dull grey blanket that matches your mood. Your skin has hardened into something alien. The tar is cooling, cracking at the edges, each flake a reminder that you've been marked, cooked, and preserved. Like meat. But here's the kicker. This isn't the worst tar and feather story history has to offer. In 14th century France, a man accused of impersonating clergy was publicly tarred, feathered, and then nailed to a church door, still alive. In early German provinces, similar punishments involved pitch combined with lime to increase blistering. And in colonial America, long after the medieval period ended, mobs would revive the ritual as a political tool. Pain mixed with spectacle, a mobile execution in all but name. There's even a fringe account from Hungary where the accused was covered in tar rolled in fine dust and then set on fire, allegedly for poisoning a nobleman's horse. That story is debated, of course, like most of the strangest ones, but someone had to dream it up, and that alone is chilling. Eventually the guards return. They hose you off. Yes, literally. A cold bucket of water to harden the tar, stop the bleeding, and wash away enough crusted pitch to make you recognisable again. You're returned to the dungeon like spoiled goods. In your cell you can't sit. You can't lie down. You crouch in the corner like a wounded animal, breath shallow, the scent of burnt flesh wrapped around you like a curse. Across the hall, the woman's cell remains empty. You keep glancing at it as if hoping she'll just appear again one day, bruised, mouthy, indestructible. But she doesn't. All that remains is a smear of dried blood on the wall and a single tuft of hair stuck to the iron hinge. Later that night, the guard you've nicknamed Gravel Voice comes by with something unexpected. Bread and butter. Not much, just a crust and a smear, but it's the first flavour you've tasted since this all began. You stare at him, unsure if it's a trick. He just shrugs and he mutters, "Don't want you dying yet." Yet. You eat it slowly, savouring every grain of salt, every fleck of burnt crust. The butter soaks into the bread unevenly, making parts of it soft and others crunchy. It's a miracle, a crime considering the circumstances. You'd thank him if you could remember how. And then, as you're finishing the last bite, you hear the voice. It's coming from one cell over, someone new, a man, whispering. "Tomorrow," he says. "They quarter the butcher." You blink. "Quarter?" He nods, eyes gleaming in the torchlight. "You'll hear it. They start at dawn." You close your eyes. You've heard of quartering. Everyone has. It's the kind of punishment that ends stories. But you're still here, and so is the pitch on your chest. You don't sleep that night, not because of the pain, though it's everywhere, but because your cellmate from 2 doors down was right. At dawn it begins. First come the bells, not church bells, not elegant. These clang like cowbells, heavy and dull, rung in no particular rhythm. They're the kind that let a village know something very public is about to happen. Then comes the chanting. People outside singing low and slow like they're preparing for a harvest. But you know it's not wheat they're about to split. You drag yourself to the bars. It takes time. Every movement tugs at dried tar and scrapes your flayed back against the rough fabric of your shirt. You hiss, breathe through clenched teeth and force your legs beneath you until you're kneeling, just enough to peek through the narrow slit in the stone and see the square. And there he is, the butcher. Not a metaphor. He was actually the village butcher, someone you barely noticed before all this. Now he's naked from the waist down, strapped to a wooden bench with his arms and legs pulled taut in 4 directions. Ropes stretch from his wrists and ankles to 4 large wooden horses, each manned by a rider waiting for the signal. His body already looks impossibly tight, like a human drum, hanged, drawn and quartered. The phrase floats through your mind like a bad nursery rhyme. It's one of those punishments people use in stories. Steal a loaf of bread? Be careful or you'll be drawn and quartered. You always thought it was an exaggeration. But no, not here, not now. They begin with the hanging. A noose is fastened around the butcher's neck, and he's lifted just enough to choke, but not die. His legs kick, arms flail. It lasts maybe 30 seconds, maybe a minute, before they lower him again. Just enough to keep him dizzy. Alive. Prime for the next act. Next he's drawn. In some places, that meant dragging a person behind a horse to the site of execution. But here, it means opening him up, starting with the abdomen. A man with a curved knife, dressed far too cleanly for this job, steps forward and plunges it into the butcher's belly. You don't look away. Not because you're brave, but because you can't. Your body is frozen. Your mind is pinned to the spot like a moth to flame. The butcher screams, loud, wordless. The kind of scream that clears a crowd or draws one closer. The executioner works methodically, slicing open the abdominal wall, pulling out loops of intestine like ropes from a sack. He holds them up to the crowd. They cheer. Someone faints. Then comes the fire. A brazier is brought forward. The executioner presses a hot iron into the exposed organs, cauterizing slowly, just enough to keep the butcher from bleeding out before the finale. You can't imagine a worse way to exist. Until the horses start moving. Quartering. Historically, this was the English crown's favourite punishment for high treason. It wasn't just execution, it was annihilation. The ultimate statement. First hang, then disembowel, then chop off the genitals, then quarter the body by tying limbs to horses and making them run in opposite directions. Sometimes the ropes snapped before the limbs did. Sometimes they didn't. In this case, the horses move one at a time. First, the left arm. A sharp snap, followed by the wet rip of muscle and tendon. The butcher doesn't scream anymore. He just breathes in short, stunned gasps. Then the right leg. The third horse doesn't even need encouragement. The limb pops free like meat from a roasted bone. The fourth takes the head with it. Not because the rope was tied there, but because the neck finally gave out. You fall backward in your cell. You're not sick. You don't have anything left to vomit. But your body shakes like it wants to purge something. Your stomach spasms. You sweat cold. That's the moment the guards arrive. Your turn, one says. You don't know what for, you can't imagine what's left. You're wrong, of course. There's always something left. They lead you, not to the square, not to the torture chamber, but to the far side of the town wall near the stables. There, a tall wooden structure waits, shaped like a pyramid with a razor-sharp edge on top. Like a roof if the architect was insane. You recognise it. You've heard of it, the Spanish donkey, again. But this one has additions, weights, iron rings, rope pulleys overhead. You're hoisted up, legs spread, and gently, oh so gently, lowered onto the wedge. The pain is immediate. Your thighs press against the unforgiving edge and you feel it dig up into your pelvis like an accusation. Then come the weights. They tie them to your ankles, one at a time. It gets worse with every pound. The wedge presses deeper. You start to feel pressure in places that shouldn't feel pressure. Your spine compresses. Your vision blurs. You can't breathe. Somewhere a child laughs. In one hand, he holds a crust of bread. You want to scream, but all you can do is wheeze. Historically, this punishment was used in Spain and France, sometimes on suspected witches, sometimes on rebellious wives, and occasionally, charmingly, on debtors. It wasn't always fatal, but it never left you the same. The guards let you dangle for what must be an hour. Then they hoist you off. You fall, literally fall, legs limp, pelvis screaming, vision a tunnel of agony. They don't even walk you back, they wheel you. In a cart used for manure, back in your cell you collapse and stay there, unmoving. Everything inside you aches in new and unfamiliar ways. You suspect something is broken, maybe more than one something, maybe everything. Outside, the bell rings again. Someone else is next. You've survived another day. You don't know how. You wake up soaked in your own sweat. Every inch of your body feels like it's wrapped in barbed wire soaked in vinegar. Your thighs are swollen, your groin a smouldering ache that pulses with every breath, and your lower back screams every time you so much as twitch. The Spanish donkey left its mark, inside and out. You've never understood why anyone would name something so absurdly cruel after a donkey, till you remember that donkeys are beasts of burden, quiet, stubborn, forced to carry what no one else wants to. You suppose the name fits. You lie there for a long time, breathing in shallow gulps, trying to catalogue which parts of your body still work. Fingers? Yes, barely. Legs? They exist. Moving them feels like asking a collapsed bridge to dance. You try anyway, shifting just enough to sit up against the wall, and you cry out, pathetically. There's no one listening, of course. You could scream yourself hoarse in this place. And all you'd get is a knock on the door telling you to keep it down. Hours pass. You think? It's hard to tell. Light flickers through the slit high on the wall, but that could mean anything. Eventually, the guards return. You expect them to drag you to another hideous device, maybe one shaped like a swan that sets your hair on fire, but instead they bring something different. A blade and a bucket. You freeze. It takes you too long to realise what they're here for. They don't explain. They never do. One guard holds you still. The other reaches into his pouch and pulls out a pair of iron shears, like gardening tools, but with sharper edges and a cold professional grip. He lifts your head by the hair, looks you in the eye, and says the only word you'll hear all day. Hold. Then he cuts, cropping. It starts with your ears. You hear the crunch more than you feel it. The dull, wet snap of cartilage as the blade shears off the top half of your right ear. Blood runs immediately, warm and fast down your neck. The second ear follows. You flinch and the guard slaps your cheek. Next is the nose. You don't scream. You can't. You bite down so hard you taste iron. But it's the only way to keep from blacking out. The blade presses against the bridge of your nose and slices downward. Not all at once. There's resistance, a crunch, then silence. They toss the pieces into the bucket like scraps. Your vision swims, blood pools in your lap, and your whole face is one pulsing, wet throb. But they're not finished. Out comes the iron. Is already glowing red, placed on a small portable brazier nearby. The branding iron is shaped like an F, for felon or fraud, maybe fool. They don't say. They press it into your forehead. You do scream this time. Historically, cropping and branding were among the most widely used punishments in the medieval toolbox. Not always for serious crimes. People were cropped for gossip, for theft, for public drunkenness. Branding was used to mark repeat offenders, or simply to humiliate someone too slippery to be locked away. The goal wasn't death, it was memory. You'd carry your punishment with you, carved into your face long after the actual crime had been forgotten. In 17th century England, a woman was branded on both cheeks for criticising the local magistrate's taxes. A man caught poaching royal deer lost both ears and received a P on his palm. In some regions, letters were tailored to fit the crime. B for blasphemy, H for heretic, T for traitor. It wasn't just justice, it was a walking resume of disgrace. And branding wasn't limited to the poor. Nobles who fell out of favour with royalty were sometimes marked privately, then exiled, visibly ruined. The kind of punishment that whispered louder than execution. Back in your personal purgatory, the iron finally lifts from your forehead, leaving behind a sizzling patch of skin that smells like charred meat. You collapse. The guards don't even bother washing the wound. One spits in your direction, mutters something about lesson learned, and leaves the bucket behind. Inside it, your ears, your nose, and the iron. Still hot, you curl up, small, animal, shaking. There's nothing left to say. Your lips move, but the words don't come. You don't know if it's shock or surrender. Both, probably. Time passes, again. Later. Footsteps echo down the corridor, different from the guards. Lighter, rhythmic. You crawl to the bars and peer out through the haze of dried blood and blurred vision. A woman is being led down the hallway, clothed in rags, but her head held high. She wears something around her neck, a collar heavy and studded with thorns. You recognise it. A variation of the iron collar. except this one's ornamental, a fashion of pain. This is the shoes of shame. She's wearing them. They're iron shoes, pointed at the toe, strapped tight with leather bindings. Each step she takes is measured and deliberate. The shoes aren't just uncomfortable, they're weaponized. The inner sole is spiked, designed to jab her feet with every movement. The outer toe is exaggerated, curled upward and sharpened, forcing her gait into a ridiculous bounce. It's not just punishment, it's mockery. Shoes of shame were real, used throughout Europe, especially in German and Austrian towns. Women accused of adultery, men who fled debt, even dancers who performed too provocatively could be sentenced to wear them for days, sometimes weeks. They came in various styles, some oversized and heavy, others with bells or weights added for humiliation. You weren't just forced to suffer, you were made into a spectacle. There's a documented case in 1539 of a woman in Bavaria forced to march in iron heels through town square every morning for a week, carrying a wooden baby doll, after being accused of immorality. Another wore the shoes while balancing a bucket of stones on her head. If she spilled even one, her sentence was extended. You watch as the woman is paraded past the cells, her eyes flick to yours. She doesn't flinch. There's strength in her stare. Even now, even like this, you want to remember how that feels. Later, when the pain returns full force, you hold that image in your mind. Her back straight, her feet bleeding, but her pride intact. Maybe that's all you have left. You try to sleep sitting up. Lying down is no longer an option, not with your back flayed, raw, tarred skin still clinging in cracking patches, and your legs feeling like they've been cleaved in half by a wedge. Your face, once your own, now burns with the iron echo of the brand seared into your forehead. It itches and throbs at the same time, pulsing like it has its own heartbeat. You imagine you could tap it and feel a drumbeat beneath your skin. Every time you close your eyes, you see that woman in the shoes of shame. Step, bleed, step, bleed. She didn't look broken. You did. You still do. It's almost morning when the cell door creaks open again. You flinch. Automatic now, like a heartbeat. You brace for more humiliation, more cutting, more fire. But the guard does something strange. He brings you water. Cool, clear water in a clay jug. He doesn't toss it or sneer. He hands it to you directly, like it's not part of a sick game. "Drink!" he says gruff. You stare at him. Why? Because you'll need it. Not exactly comforting. You drink anyway, slowly. Every gulp hurts your throat. Burnt, scraped dry, but you force it down. You've learned by now that when they let you drink, it usually means they're about to wring you out like a cloth. Better to go in hydrated. Sure enough, you're dragged from the cell half an hour later. But the walk this time is longer. It doesn't end at the courtyard or the square, or even the punishment rooms. They lead you through a stone corridor you've never seen before, colder, darker, lined with mould and thick iron rings bolted into the walls. At the end of the corridor is a room with no windows, one torch, one object in the centre. It looks almost innocent at first glance. A wheel. Not like a carriage wheel, though it's made of wood. This one is wide, flat across the surface, reinforced with iron. Mounted on a tall wooden frame so it can be spun like a game show prize, except the prize, is nothing you'd want. This is a tread wheel. And it's not for torture. Not exactly. It's for punishment through labour. They shove you toward it and gesture at the side where thick wooden slats form a kind of rotating staircase. Your task is obvious. Walk. Forever. Like a human hamster wheel, except heavier. And if you fall, you won't be cushioned by hay. You'll just break your jaw on timber soaked in your own sweat. You hesitate. A guard grabs the back of your collar and lifts. You step on. The moment your weight hits the wheel, it shifts, and you start moving, slow at first, but steady. You walk, and the wheel turns, and the guards watch. At first, it feels manageable, almost mechanical, just one foot in front of the other. But after 10 minutes, your thighs begin to quake, your back sags, your breath turns sharp, the slats grow slick with condensation and old grime, and your bare feet begin to slide. You try to steady yourself, but your flayed skin brushes the rough wood and you gasp, every nerve lighting up with electric pain. The wheel doesn't stop. Historically, punishment tread wheels were common in later medieval and early modern Europe, especially in prisons. They were sold as labour reform, forcing the condemned to generate energy, power mills, or just pass time through effort. But they were also a brilliant psychological tool. The wheel made sure you did something, but accomplished nothing. You walked, sweated, ached and suffered, without moving an inch forward. Some tread wheels were connected to grinding stones or water pumps. Others, especially in debtors' prisons, weren't connected to anything at all. The motion was the punishment. Sometimes people were forced to climb them for 8 hours a day, sometimes more. There's even a fringe account from a prison in northern Italy where a man was made to walk the wheel while blindfolded for 30 straight days. They removed the blindfold only to let him watch others do it after him. He allegedly went blind or mad, possibly both. Back in your own miserable march, your legs begin to buckle, your knees shake like candle flames. You try to focus on something, your breath, a splinter in the wheel's frame, the faint whistle of wind squeezing through a crack in the ceiling. The guards don't speak. One yawns. Eventually you collapse. The wheel throws you forward, and you slam against the bottom sletton. Your shoulder cracks. The pain blossoms like a bruise made of fire. You gasp, mouth open, cheek pressed to filthy wood. The wheel stops. You expect a whip, a boot to the ribs, but they just lift you off the wheel and throw you into a corner, like a broken tool. You lie there for hours. You lose track of time. At some point they toss in a bowl of gruel, thin and grey. You lap at it without sitting up like a dog. Later you're brought back to your cell, but not before passing through the courtyard. You see something new. A man kneeling in the stocks. Another classic. His arms and legs are locked into place, body bent forward, head trapped between two thick wooden boards. People are gathered around him. Some jeer, some throw food. One woman tosses a fish, not fresh. It's the pillory, yet another iconic punishment. It's almost quaint compared to what you've endured. You remember hearing about it in stories? A thief who stole a chicken, a liar who spread rumours about the Lord's son, a drunk who insulted the bishop, all marched to the square, locked in place, then abandoned to the town's rage. But what most stories forget to mention is how long it lasted. Sometimes hours, sometimes days. People lost teeth from being pelted with rocks. One man died after someone shoved hot coals into his mouth. Another lost an eye to a well-aimed horseshoe. It was punishment by public committee, and sometimes the committee got creative. A baker in Denmark was once placed in the stocks, then force-fed his own burnt bread until he passed out. In some towns, pillories came with added accessories, shame masks, or weighted helmets that caused neck strain. One poor soul in Belgium was fitted with a donkey mask while locked in place, branded with a D for dumbass. You watch the man in the pillory try to move. He can't. His face is red. One child pokes at him with a stick. You blink, and you're back in your cell again. The door closes behind you. You lie there, wondering what day it is. The answer doesn't matter. But the next punishment? That will. You wake to the sound of clinking metal, but it's not chains this time. It's something heavier, more deliberate. Not a tool, not a weapon. Something worse, something sacred, in that sick medieval way where sacred just means terrifying. The guards are standing in your doorway again. You sit up without being asked. At this point you've learnt that cooperation is less about compliance and more about survival. Move when they tell you, or they'll make you wish you had. They don't bind you, they just gesture, and you follow. Limping, sore. You can feel dried blood cracking along your flayed back. Your branded forehead still radiates heat. The taste in your mouth is copper and mould. You try to wipe it away with the back of your hand, but all that does is smear the grime already there. They lead you outside, not to the usual square, but to a hill just beyond the town wall. The kind of place people might once have gone for picnics or weddings, back when the world made a little more sense. Today it's a place of execution. At the top of the hill is a structure that's both majestic and grotesque. It gleams in the morning light, polished to a dull bronze glow. It's shaped like a giant bull, but this one has horns, a flared snout and a gaping mouth formed into a permanent snarl. You freeze. Not again. But they wave you past it. Thank every god still pretending to listen. You're brought instead to a strange-looking machine, a large wooden wheel, but not like the treadwheel from before. This one isn't for labour, it's for display. It's mounted vertically, with iron bars set across its face like a grid. You're not the only one here today. Another prisoner is already tied to it, spread out like a starfish, his body sagging between the bars, eyes open and glassy. The breaking wheel. Also known as the Catherine wheel, it's a classic in medieval punishment design. Named not for its creator, but for St. Catherine, who was famously sentenced to die on one. Legend says the wheel shattered when she touched it, divine intervention saving her from a brutal fate. You're not feeling particularly saintly today, so you doubt you'll get the same miracle. They strap you down next. Limbs splayed awkwardly across the spokes, rope digging into raw skin. The wood is already stained from previous victims, black smears that look like shadows burned into the grain. Then comes the club. It's not elegant, just a thick iron-reinforced cudgel. The executioner, bald, expressionless, stands beside you, lifting the club with the ease of someone who's done this far too often. He raises it above your left arm. Crack! Pain explodes from your forearm like fire through glass. You scream, loud. The kind of scream you thought you'd forgotten how to make. The kind that doesn't care who's listening. Crack. Your right leg this time. The bone gives with a sickening pop. You can't move, not because of the restraints, but because your body has started shutting itself down to protect you. Everything is fuzzy. You can't tell what's swelling and what's just throbbing. They don't hit every limb, not today. Today's a warning, a performance. You remember reading or hearing once that the full breaking will was reserved for the worst crimes: murder, treason, attempted regicide. The worst part wasn't the pain, it was the waiting. In some executions, the victim would be beaten limb by limb, then left tied to the wheel, propped up vertically for the birds to finish. It could take hours, sometimes days. In France, one man reportedly survived for 36 hours. Villagers fed him wine through a straw out of pity. He thanked them between gasps. Scholars argue whether the wheel was ever truly that efficient at prolonging death, or whether those stories were exaggerated. But enough court records and paintings exist to suggest that someone, somewhere, thought this was a good idea, and built one, and used it. You're pulled off the wheel before it gets worse. You can't stand, your left arm dangles uselessly. Your right leg doesn't respond at all. They carry you back, your body slumped between two guards like a puppet that's lost its strings. Back in your cell, they toss you in. You land hard, something pops, you don't even bother screaming anymore. Hours pass, then night. You wake to the sound of voices, low, chanting, familiar. You crawl, literally crawl to the bars. In the corridor, 4 monks walk past, carrying something wrapped in cloth. A tongue, still bleeding. You stare. Behind them, a woman is dragged, her mouth packed with rags. Blood seeps from the corners of her lips. Her eyes are wide, panicked. You recognize her. She's the one who used to sing in the yard when she thought no one was listening. Her voice was terrible, but loud, cheerful, brave. Then now she won't sing again. Tongue removal. Not new, not rare. Medieval courts loved it. Convenient way to silence heretics, gossips, blasphemers. The church had entire doctrines about the power of the tongue, how it could corrupt, tempt, destroy, rip it out, and you purify the soul. In 14th century Florence, a poet was punished this way after writing sonnets criticizing a bishop. In Constantinople, a woman accused of spreading demonic hymns had her tongue nailed to a wooden board before it was sliced free. Some methods involved tongs, others, hot irons. One particularly cruel variant required the victim to bite down on a stick while a sharpened spike was driven through the lower jaw and up through the mouth, severing the tongue from below. It wasn't always fatal. That was the point. You don't sleep that night. You can't. Every noise sounds like someone coming for your tongue next. Every silence feels like proof that someone else has already lost theirs. You try to whisper in the dark just to prove you still can. It comes out cracked and hoarse. Your vocal cords roar from days of screaming and your mouth still tinged with the coppery aftertaste of fear. But the words are there, just faint echoes of a voice that hasn't entirely abandoned you yet. For now, that's enough. When the guards come this time, there's no preamble, no taunts. They don't even bother with ropes. You're too broken to resist. They could point in any direction and you'd crawl there yourself just to get it over with. Your left arm still dangles uselessly, the elbow swelling like fruit about to split. Your right leg is stiff and purple from the wheel. The only part of you that still feels fully your own is your silence. They lead you to a part of the dungeon you haven't seen before. The air is colder here, somehow older. The walls are closer together, and the torches burn lower. You pass cells with no doors, just iron rings bolted into the stone and shackles hanging like vines from a dead tree. At the end of the corridor you see it. A table, wide, dark-stained. Not the kind of table anyone eats from. At each corner a metal ring, a place for wrists, for ankles. You already know what this is. Dismemberment. Your stomach knots. You thought you'd been through it all, branding, flaying, the wheel, the bull. But nothing prepares you for the idea of being taken apart like furniture. There's something deeply primal about it. Bones can break, skin can burn, but the removal of limbs, that's irreversible. That's not just pain, that's subtraction. They don't explain what you've done to deserve it. You've stopped asking anyway. Guilt, innocence, it doesn't matter here. Punishment is the new truth. They lay you on the table. Your body protests every motion. Your shoulder screams, your leg is dead weight. They don't care. You're spread out like a frog on a dissecting tray and the straps come down quick, tight and final. You stare at the ceiling. There's a crack in the stone that looks like a serpent. You decide to focus on it. If it moves, you're hallucinating. If it doesn't, maybe you're still sane. The executioner enters. You expected him to look cruel, but he doesn't. He looks tired. Grey hair, stiff posture, eyes that have seen far too much of this. He holds a saw, not long, but wickedly sharp, with a handle that's worn smooth by the years of use. He doesn't start immediately. He waits, then he speaks. Left hand, he says. Won't need it where you're going. You want to scream, you want to plead, but your mouth doesn't move. He places the saw at your wrist. The first draw is clean. The blade bites fast, severing skin and dragging a hot white sting through the nerves. You jolt involuntarily. The second cut is worse. It grinds through tendon and muscle, and by the time he hits bone, your entire body is convulsing. He pauses just long enough for your brain to process what's happening. Then the bone snaps. Not with the saw, but with a hammer. He lifts your hand, places it on the table beside you like it's a tool he's done using. You stare at it, still twitching. Historically, dismemberment was often used to punish theft, treason, or attempts to flee prison. The logic was simple. If someone used a body part to commit a crime, remove the part. Stole something, lose a hand, ran away, goodbye foot, assaulted someone. Let's see how well you manage with one eye and no fingers. But it wasn't always about the crime. Sometimes it was symbolic, a message, a demonstration of control. One famous case involved a French noble who was dismembered in public after plotting against the king. His limbs were removed one by one and nailed to the gates of 4 cities. His head was boiled, then displayed on a pike. The executioner received a bonus for every clean cut. Another record from Denmark tells of a thief whose right arm was removed, only for the court to realise too late that he was left-handed. So they removed that one too. In some parts of the world, dismemberment didn't even require a trial. It was performed as summary justice on the road, in the market square, at the gallows. In Hungary, one town posted a sign, "Steal and your hand shall decorate our trees." There's no record of how many branches they used. Back on your own table of horrors, the executioner places a cloth over your stump. It's not mercy, just routine. Be grateful, he mutters. You get to keep the others. You want to ask why. Why not both? Why leave you just barely functional? But then you realise, this way you can still work. You can still walk back to your cell. You can still carry shame with the one hand you've got left. They unstrap you. The pain rushes in like a tide. You almost fall. But a guard steadies you. Not kindly, just practically. You limp back through the corridor past those same shackles, past cells where no one watches anymore. You return to your stone box. The guard tosses your severed hand in after you. You don't look at it. Not at first. Later, when the cell goes quiet and the torches fade, you finally crawl to the corner and examine it. It's curled slightly, fingers bent inward, like it's still holding something. Maybe it is. A memory, a prayer, a curse. You bury it in the straw, you don't want to see it again. You can't stop staring at the stump. It's not even bandaged anymore. The rag they tied around it unravelled hours ago, and you haven't had the strength to fix it. The skin around the edges has gone a sickly purple, puckered and angry. You watch it like someone watching a thunderstorm, too fascinated to look away, too afraid to move. The pain comes in waves now, sometimes a dull hum, like bees in your bones. Other times it spikes, hot and sharp, shooting straight to your spine like a cruel reminder that no part of you gets to forget. There's no sense of time anymore, just agony and silence broken up by the occasional echo of someone else screaming down the hall. You've come to recognise voices, One man always wails in Latin, another grunts like an ox. You haven't heard the woman from the shame shoe since she passed by days ago. Bleeding, proud, vanished. Your turn comes again, of course. It always does. The guards appear just after a meal of grey broth and stale crust. You're still chewing when they open the door and gesture. You swallow hard and push yourself to your feet with your one good hand. The pain nearly buckles your knees. The wound throbs in time with your heartbeat. You're dizzy. The world is spinning slightly. Still you walk. Outside, the sky is low and yellow. It smells like rain. For a moment you think maybe this punishment will be different. Maybe it'll just be standing in the mud while someone yells at you. Maybe you've run out of limbs to hurt. But no! You see the setup as soon as you reach the square. 2 wooden beams crossed at the top like a crooked T. A short rope hangs from the centre. Beneath it, a platform stained nearly black. A second rope lies coiled nearby. A man is already up there. The crowd is already gathering. You realise this isn't just a punishment today, it's a performance. They lift you onto the platform next to the man. He's young, younger than you, barefoot, with wild eyes and bruises down his neck. He's trying to say something, but his lips are too swollen to move properly. One guard whispers something to him, then tightens the rope around his waist. Not his neck, his waist. A second rope is wrapped around his ankles. You know this. This is partial hanging. Not the clean drop of modern gallows, not the kind that snaps your neck like a twig and leaves you swinging limp. No, this is the slow kind. They haul the young man upward, just enough for his toes to dangle an inch above the platform. Not enough to kill him quickly, just enough to suffocate him. His body jerks. His face darkens. He kicks at the air, slowly at first, then faster. The crowd is quiet, waiting. After nearly a minute, they let him down. He gasps, coughs, collapses. Then they do it again. This is part of a larger punishment known historically as the pillory hanging, or sometimes the Judas swing. Meant to punish, not to execute, this technique was common across medieval Europe. The victim was lifted until only part of their body weight rested on the neck, just enough to make breathing impossible. The pressure would build slowly, causing dizziness, nausea, blurred vision. But they didn't let you die. Not yet. They repeated the lift, over and over, until the prisoner confessed, or passed out, or both. You're strapped in next. Your legs don't want to hold you, and the missing hand throws off your balance, so they tie your waist to the post for stability. A rope is looped around your neck, not tight, not yet. The knot rests just behind your jaw like a whispered threat. Then they lift you, just an inch. Just enough. Your feet leave the platform, the rope pulls tight under your chin. At first it's just discomfort, then pressure, then panic. Your lungs forget how to work, you kick. Instinct, useless. You can't scream, you can't think. The world narrows and your ears ring, and then drop. Your feet slam into the wood, you collapse. Inhale once, twice, the air tastes like fire. Then up again, and again. You lose count, you lose time. Each lift steals something, a breath, a moment, a piece of yourself. Eventually they let you down for good. You lie flat, your body twitching, your face wet with tears you didn't know were coming. Your throat feels like it's been shredded with wire. Your neck pulses with bruised heat. You can't swallow. You're not sure you remember how. The crowd begins to disperse. You hear a woman mutter, "Better than he deserves." You wonder what they think you did. You wonder if you even remember. They don't take you back right away. Instead, you're dragged to the side of the platform and dropped beside a pile of discarded rope and dirty cloth. You lie there, half-conscious, flies buzzing around your ears. That's when you see it. Another man, being led toward the post. But his punishment is different. They tie him upright, then they bring out a blade, and they cut off his tongue. Clean, fast, brutal. He gurgles something that used to be words, and the crowd recoils. They pack the wound with ash and rag, then tie a gag over his face. No more speaking. Just a permanent silence where a voice used to be. You've seen this already, but seeing it again up close feels worse. As if it's foreshadowing. Eventually they return for you. You're hoisted like a sack of grain and dragged back through the mud. Back into stone and back into dark, back into your cell. You collapse. This time you don't cry, you don't move, you just wait, because you know. The next time they'll take something else, and you'll let them. You wake up choking on your own breath. Your throat, bruised from the hanging, feels like it's wrapped in twine. Every swallow scrapes like sandpaper dipped in vinegar. Your lips are cracked. Your eyes stuck half shut with the kind of sleep that isn't restful, just the body turning itself off for damage control. You try to sit up, but your one remaining hand slips on the stone floor. You laugh, just once. It comes out as a wet, broken wheeze. You don't even sound human anymore. The sound echoes through the corridor. Someone stirs, a cough, a whisper. Chains rattle a few cells down. The others are still here, still alive, still waiting. You wonder if they even know who they used to be. It doesn't take long for the guards to come. Today their silence is heavier than usual. They don't mock you, they don't even look at you. That alone tells you this one will be bad. When they keep their mouths shut, it usually means someone higher up is watching, or listening, or both. They lead you out of your cell. You limp with them, knees trembling, body swaying like an old fence post in the wind. Your arm, or what's left of it, is wrapped in a new bandage. You don't know when that happened. It's crusted with dried blood and something sticky. Probably a mercy from one of the quieter guards. The kind who still believes there's a line you don't cross. Too bad everyone else in this place crossed it long ago and torched the map on the way. The square is already crowded when you arrive. You hear them before you see them. The whispers, the murmurs, the rising chant of the crowd hungry for the next performance. You can barely lift your head, but you recognise the shape in the centre. 4 posts arranged in a rough square, each one anchored with iron rings and ropes. Your stomach drops. They're not punishing you alone today, they're displaying you. Someone ties your legs to the lower rings, your arms, what's left of them, are lashed to the upper ones. It takes 3 guards to arrange you without tipping you over. You're slumped forward slightly, but not enough to faint. A priest steps forward. You groan. Because when the priest shows up, it's always something big. By order of the court, he reads, for crimes against the crown, for the mocking of the church, and for repeated defiance of lawful judgment, this man shall be hanged, drawn on, and quartered. You feel everything in your body go still. This is it. This is that punishment, the one that's talked about in hushed tones in taverns, the one the guards joke about like it's a ghost story, the one that doesn't just kill you, it reduces you to an example. Hanged, drawn and quartered. The full trilogy. They begin, as always, with the hanging. You're lifted by the neck again. Not high, just enough to dangle. You can't scream this time. Your throat's already shredded. You just kick, weakly, pathetically. Then they lower you. Still alive. They drag you to a second platform. This one stained darker than any you've seen. The kind of stain that doesn't come out. The kind that tells stories. You're tied down again. Legs apart, arms stretched. A man steps forward holding a knife. It's small, sharp, shaped for precision. You know what's next. They don't kill you clean, they go for your belly. A slow slice from pelvis to sternum, just deep enough to part the skin. Warmth floods out of you. Your vision blurs. You see your own guts. You feel air hit things that were never meant to see light. They reach in, pull out intestines like ropes, coil them on your chest like garlands. You think you might be hallucinating because someone in the crowd cheers. Then comes the final part, the quartering. You're still alive when they tie your legs to one horse, what's left of your arms to another. 2 more ropes for the shoulders and hips. The horses are nervous, restless. The handlers keep whispering to them like it's a wedding march. You close your eyes, so you pray not for mercy, but for speed. They snap the whips. The horses surge. Your body does not cooperate. You feel everything tear. You hear the sound of tendons ripping, bones separating, joints unhinging. There's screaming. You don't know if it's yours. You black out, mercifully. Historically, this punishment was reserved for high treason in England and elsewhere across Europe. It was never just about death. It was a warning. The hanged man was lowered before death, then disemboweled, his organs burned before his eyes. Then the body was dismembered and the parts displayed, on city gates, bridges, market stalls. Let the people know. This is what betrayal earns you. In 1305, William Wallace, yes, that Wallace, was hanged, drawn and quartered in London. His head was placed on a spike on London Bridge. His limbs sent to Newcastle, Berwick, Perth and Stirling. A man turned into a message. It didn't stop others, but it made them hesitate. You wake up somehow, still breathing. Your legs are intact, so is one arm. It wasn't the quartering, just a rehearsal. They wanted you to think it was over, but there's still more of you left to punish. You're dumped back in your cell and you crawl to the corner. Something inside you is gone now, not physically, mentally. You stop fighting somewhere between the knife and the rope. Tomorrow will come, and you will meet it. Because what choice do you have? You don't get up for a long time, not when the rats skitter past your leg, not when the straw pokes your spine like a bed of nails, and not when a bucket of slop is shoved through the bars and splashes half across the floor. You just lie there unmoving, half-curled, like some half-eaten meal the world forgot to finish. You don't even blink. Because blinking means effort, and effort means caring. And you've learned what caring gets you in this place. Eventually, though, your bladder decides for you. You drag yourself to the corner, then crawl back, your knees grinding against the floor like sandpaper. You don't want to see your reflection, but you catch a glimpse in a puddle. What little light there is makes your face look stretched and sunken, your mouth twisted, one eye half shut. You're barely human. More scarecrow than man, a scarecrow missing limbs. You laugh once, and it comes out as a choking cough. When the guards come, you don't resist. They don't even touch you. They just wait, staring, until you realise this is your cue. You shuffle after them like a shadow following its own death. Today, it's not the square. It's a long hallway lined with doors, some open, some not. Each one with a little window, most fogged up with grime or breath. There's a smell here, stronger than usual. Something between boiled leather and burned toast. You know that smell. It means heat. It means pain. They stop at a door and push it open. Inside, it's dimly lit. The brazier in the corner glows like an open wound. On a wooden bench are tools, long tongs, a clamp, and something small and metal you can't quite identify from the doorway. And hanging from the wall is a row of gags. You take a step back, but the guard's hand is already at your back. Be still, he says. They sit you down, tie your only hand to a hook behind your back, secure your legs at the ankles. You've become so used to these bindings that your body almost leans into them, as if finding comfort in the routine. Then comes the gag. Not just a cloth. This one's made of iron. It straps around the back of your head like a muzzle, with a thick, wedge-shaped plate that fits between your teeth. At first, you think it's to silence you, but then you notice the screws. The plate can be tightened, and it is. Each turn presses the iron deeper into your jaw. You bite down out of reflex, but that just drives it harder against your molars. You can feel your gums swelling instantly. This is oral torture. Not screaming, not mutilation, just pressure. Internal, silent, slow. They leave it there. No words, no demands, no threats. Just you, and the clamp, and time. This kind of punishment isn't as famous as the wheel or the rack, but it was real and widespread. Known variously as the mouth screw, iron gag, or jawbreaker, it was a favourite in prisons and inquisitions where silence was prized above blood. By controlling the mouth, you controlled the soul, or so they believed. In 16th century Saxony, the iron gag was used not just to punish blasphemers, but also to prevent suicide. Yes, you heard that right. If you were on suicide watch, they forced the gag into your mouth so you couldn't bite your own tongue off or swallow poison. Imagine that, being forced to live, slowly, painfully, with a mouthful of metal. Some designs even included spikes, upward into the roof of the mouth, downward toward the tongue. Others had a funnel for water torture, allowing slow pouring while keeping the jaws open. The one you wear now doesn't pierce, but it atrocious. After 20 minutes, your teeth start to loosen. You can feel one molar shifting every time you swallow. Saliva pools under your tongue, but you can't spit. You try to breathe through your nose, but it's clogged with dried blood from the last punishment. You wheeze instead. It sounds like an old kettle trying to boil. Your jaw starts to lock. Muscles twitch involuntarily. Every nerve in your face feels electrified. Your one good hand clenches behind your back, nails digging into your palm. After an hour you black out. When you wake, the gag is gone. But your jaw won't close, and you try to speak, but all that comes out is a slow, slurred moan. The guards lift you like a broken marionette and carry you, not to your cell, but outside. To the platform. A fresh crowd, you can feel their eyes like flies on your skin. They strap you into the stocks, your neck, your one wrist, your knees. The wooden bar slams down with a thud, locking you in. And there you are, bent forward, mouth hanging open, jaw dislocated, one arm pinned, the other missing. Half naked, bleeding, raw. The crowd begins its work. At first, it's just jeers, then come the projectiles, rotten fruit, Old bones, a dead fish, someone slaps the back of your head with a boot. Another pours sour ale into your hair. You can't wipe your face, can't move, you drool. They laugh. The stocks were never just a device, they were an invitation. To mock, to shame, to turn punishment into performance. And it worked. In medieval England, a man in the stocks might stay there for hours, even days. Townsfolk would schedule visits like social calls, bring the kids, toss a tomato, point and laugh. In France, some stocks were mobile, pushed through the streets like carnival rides, letting more people join in. One record from 1472 describes a man who spent 12 hours in the stocks, only to have his ears nailed to the wooden frame after spitting on the mare. He survived. He also never spoke again. You stay there until sunset. By the time they pull you out, you've lost another tooth. You can feel it rolling around in your mouth like a stone. You don't spit it out, you swallow. Back in your cell, you collapse. Your jaw is crooked. Your lips are split. You wonder how many more punishments can fit in one body. Probably a few. You have more nights ahead, and they have more ideas. You try to speak, but your tongue feels too big, your jaw too loose. Every sound you attempt turns into a grunt or a croak, like some half-dead animal echoing from deep inside you. Your mouth throbs with the dull ache of bones shifted wrong, of teeth rattling like dice in a broken cup. You touch your lips with your good hand, gently, and feel the swelling. One side is larger than the other. Your tongue is swollen too, pressed against your teeth like it's trying to crawl out. You haven't eaten in 2 days. The last bowl of gruel they gave you sat untouched. You couldn't open your jaw wide enough to take it in. It crusted over in the corner of the cell, until even the rats ignored it. You lie in the dark, breathing through your nose, your mouth slightly ajar, letting spit pool between your cheek and gums. A strand drips onto your chest. You don't wipe it. You're past dignity now. Dignity was 3 punishments ago. When the guards return this time, something's different. They don't drag you out, they don't even lift you. They bring a barrel into your cell. Not wine, not water, just thick, frothy, dark brown sludge that smells vaguely like animal fat and vinegar. Then they start pouring it into a bucket next to you. You raise an eyebrow. That's all you've got for questions these days. One guard grins. "Bath time," he says. You try to shake your head, but it barely moves. He doesn't care. They strip you. You don't resist. They always do this before humiliation. You've been naked in front of more people than you ever wanted to be. You're used to the cold, the exposure. You even think for a second that maybe this will be one of the easier ones. Then they bring out the frame. It's wood, shaped vaguely like an A-frame with leather straps at the top and bottom. You're tied to it, belly down, legs apart, arms pulled behind you. A plank is slid beneath your chest to hold your weight. Then they bring in the brush. Wide, stiff, metal bristles. The kind you'd use to clean soot from a chimney. It takes you too long to figure out what's about to happen. Then they dip the brush in the sludge and scrub. Hard, and you howl. They start at your back, rubbing the iron bristles in long, dragging circles. The mixture in the bucket isn't soap, it's a blend of animal lard, salt, vinegar and sand. Designed not to clean, but to abrade. It gets into every cut, every flayed patch of skin. The brush shreds what's left. This is scrubbing torture. Not famous, not flashy, but old. Used in prisons and workhouses when guards were bored or under orders not to kill too quickly. The idea was simple. Take the dirtiest man alive and cleanse him through fire and friction. They called it scouring. In some places, like early 15th century Bohemia, it was reserved for blasphemers. In others, it was punishment for spiritual filth. And in some fringe cases, especially around plague years, suspected carriers of illness were literally scrubbed raw with mixtures designed to drive out disease. One traveller wrote that he saw a man in Milan scrubbed with vinegar and horsehair until he bled from every pore. He died 3 days later, clean. They move from your back to your thighs, then the soles of your feet. You try to kick, but the straps hold tight. Every stroke tears new skin. The mixture bubbles in your wounds. Then they move to your face. You scream like a wounded animal. The metal bristles scrape your cheekbones, tear your lips. They jam the brush into your beard, then pull. You feel chunks of skin go with it. Your one remaining eye swells shut. They don't stop until you're bleeding from so many places you've lost count. The floor beneath the frame is sticky with pink sludge. You feel lightheaded, your heart pounding like it's trying to outrun your ribs. They throw a bucket of water over you at the end, cold and dirty. It rinses nothing, just makes the pain more awake. Then they cut you loose. You collapse onto the floor. You don't try to move. Every part of you screams. Your mouth tastes like rust. Your vision is a blur. The guard who grinned earlier leans down beside you. "Not so filthy now, are we, He laughs and walks out. You lie in the corner, wet and burning. It's late evening before they return again. Just one guard this time. He doesn't carry chains, or tools, or even keys. He has a mask. Iron, heavy, rusted at the edges. The front of it has a long snout. The eye holes are tiny. There's no mouth slit, just a metal bar that fits between your lips. He kneels down and straps it onto your face. It's called a scold's bridle, originally for women accused of gossiping, nagging, or spreading dissent. Later, used on anyone the church found disruptive. Thieves, liars, loudmouths. Inside the mask, a piece of metal juts upward, designed to pin the tongue, forcing silence and pain at once. It also prevents swallowing. And drooling. You're already drooling. Now it just pools inside. You try to breathe, but your nose is clogged from the brush. Your jaw is still sore from the gag. The mask makes it impossible to open fully. The tongue spike digs deep. You retch once, but there's nothing left in your stomach to lose. In the 16th century, some masks came with bells or horns, so townspeople would hear the wearer approaching. Others were etched with phrases like "beware the tongue" or "truthless." One woman in Scotland was made to wear hers for 7 days straight. When they took it off, her tongue was permanently disfigured. She never spoke again. Yours won't be on for 7 days, but it feels like it. You're left alone. You sit in the dark, metal pressed against your face, tongue going numb. You wonder if this is what death feels like. Not final, just quiet. The mask stays on all night. You don't sleep. You can't. Every time your body drifts toward unconsciousness, the spike beneath your tongue reminds you where you are. An iron kiss forcing you awake. Your jaw aches like it's being slowly unhinged, and your neck cramps under the weight of the device. You try to shift position, but it pulls at your scalp and pinches the bridge of your nose. Even breathing feels like a mistake. Eventually your bladder wins. You relieve yourself where you lie, because there's no choice anymore. You don't even feel shame. That disappeared the moment they scrubbed your face raw and strapped iron to it like a muzzle. You're not a person right now. You're not sure you ever were to them. The mask comes off in the morning. It doesn't come off gently. A guard unbuckles it with a jerk that rips a patch of your hair from the back of your head. When it's finally free, your tongue is swollen, split at the tip. You try to move it, but it trembles like a wounded animal and won't obey. Your lips are raw. Your jaw creaks when you try to open it. You sit in the straw, dazed, your mouth hanging open just enough for drool to start again. The taste of rust is constant. Your throat is sore from holding in screams. You're barely upright when they come again. This time you notice something new. A cart waiting outside the dungeon door. It's not a supply cart. There are chains hanging from the sides, and a slumped figure already sitting in the back, tied down by the neck. A man, or maybe a boy. His head hangs low, hair matted with something dark. They haul you into the cart beside him. The chains are cold around your waist. Your bare thighs press against wood slick with last night's rain. You don't ask where you're going, you just wait. The cart rolls through town and you hear voices. Some laugh, some spit. One child throws a turnip at your face. It misses, but not by much. A woman shouts a prayer in your direction. You're not sure if it's for you or against you. Eventually, you arrive. Not the square, not the courtyard, this is outside the walls. A field, sparse, windy. A single tree stands near the centre, bent sideways like it's trying to crawl away from the place. And in the middle of the field is a wooden post, thick, weathered, stained at the base. You know what this is. The impaling field. They drag the boy out first. He doesn't resist. He can't. His legs drag behind him like empty sacks. He mumbles something as they tie him to the post. Not words, just noises. Then they bring out the stake. It's long, sharpened, greased. Your stomach flips, but they don't use it right away. They show it to the crowd, and then they set it aside. This isn't that kind of impalement. Not yet. They start with exposure. They strip the boy and tie his arms above his head. Then they leave him, out there, alone, while the wind tears through the field and the crows begin to gather. They leave you too, not tied to a post but to a frame, horizontal. your body stretched flat and open to the sky. This is the rack, reimagined. The mobile version. Not for torture sessions indoors, but for long, slow punishment in the open. You're lashed down, wrists and ankles stretched until your joints creak. Not enough to break, just enough to remind your body who's in charge. Then they pour honey over you. Sticky, sweet, thick. You squirm as it drips into every cut, every raw patch of skin left by the brush. It sinks into the open creases at your joints and pools in your belly button. Then the bugs come. At first it's just flies. But as the sun climbs, you feel the ants, the bees. Something small and sharp crawls into your ear and doesn't come out. This is biological torture. Used across empires. The Persians perfected it. The Romans refined it. Even medieval monks recorded versions of it. Suspects tied down, smeared with honey, left under the sun to be devoured by insects. Some survived. Most didn't. There's one legendary case, likely exaggerated, of a Turkish traitor punished by being sealed between two boats, fed daily, and coated in milk and honey. Bugs slowly ate him from the outside in. Supposedly, it took 17 days. You won't last 17 hours. You bake in the heat, sweat and honey, mixing into a syrupy crust over your skin. The salt stings, the ants bite. You scream when a wasp stings your cheek, then again when a second crawls beneath your armpit. You're not alone. The boy at the post screams too, but his cries are hoarse, dying. By late afternoon he's quiet. Flies cover his eyes. You try not to look. You try to stop breathing so the bugs will stop crawling in. They don't. Eventually a guard returns. He doesn't untie you. He fans you, as if to keep you alive. They don't want you to die yet. This isn't the end. It's just Act 1. The wind picks up. A storm's coming. You pray for rain. Instead, it starts to hail. The hail isn't large, just pebble-sized pellets of ice. But after hours tied down, already stung, sunburned, and flayed, it might as well be shards of glass. The first few strike your ribs like sharp slaps. Then one catches your temple and the flash of white in your vision makes you nauseous. You twist, try to shield your face, but the straps won't allow it. The honey, now crusted over your skin like a sugar shell, mixes with the thin trickle of blood from your scalp and creates a gluey mess that pulls at every exposed nerve. The guards don't move you. They throw a thin burlap sheet across your midsection like a joke and leave you there. The boy tied to the post hasn't made a sound in hours, not even a twitch when the hail starts. You're not sure if he's dead, you think you hope he is. Eventually the storm passes. The clouds break apart into a cracked sky, and the evening sun returns, not warm, but bitterly bright, like a cruel afterthought. You've stopped feeling your fingers. Your skin burns with cold and sting, and somewhere deep beneath the pain your stomach lurches with hunger. You're pretty sure you haven't eaten in over 3 days now. That's when the men come back, not the guards, them. The men with black hoods and leather aprons, executioners. You know the look now. Their tools are always clean, not because they care, but because they're used often. One carries a bundle of sticks, another a heavy sack. You watch from where you're tied, heart thrumming slow and dull like a dying drum. They don't speak to you. They go to the boy, untie his wrists, drag him from the post. His head flops backward, mouth hanging open, one eye still twitching. Alive. Barely. They carry him toward a platform at the far side of the field, a squat square structure with iron rings built into the edges and a stone pit beneath. They don't waste time. He's laid down, limbs stretched, and tied again. Then they bring out the iron collars. Not for the neck, for the ankles. This is foot roasting. They build a small fire under the platform, and as the heat grows they position his feet just above the flame. Close enough to burn slowly, not fast enough to kill. The screaming is immediate and endless. You flinch, or try to. The leather straps on your limbs groan from the effort. Your eye twitches every time his voice cracks. They roast the soles first. The skin bubbles, blisters. They turn the feet with tongs like meat on a spit. When the fire grows too low, they add more wood. Thin branches dipped in oil. This wasn't uncommon. Foot roasting, sometimes called the Spanish chair, was popular during inquisitions and judicial torture sessions. It targeted nerve endings, forced confessions, destroyed balance. Survivors couldn't walk for months, sometimes never again. Variants of it appeared across Europe, sometimes with iron boots filled with hot coals, sometimes with flame applied directly to the soles with a red-hot iron. In one German case from 1567, a woman accused of witchcraft had her feet roasted for over 6 hours. She confessed to flying with demons just to make it stop. You wonder what this boy confessed to. The executioners don't stop. Eventually his feet are charred black, skin peeling like bark, bones exposed. The fire is extinguished with urine. His body is dragged away. You don't know if he's still breathing. They come for you next, but not for your feet. You're carried, this time with something like care, to a bench near the edge of the tree line. It's shaped like a narrow saddle, but with a metal pole running vertically up the centre. You don't understand what it is until they sit you on it, legs spread wide. Then it becomes horribly clear. It's called the horse. Sometimes the wooden horse, sometimes the Chevrolet, sometimes simply the device. It's a triangular beam, sharp-edged at the top, designed so the victim sits on the point with legs dangling on either side. Weight does the work. The more weight you add, the deeper the pain. And when the body gives out, it splits. They add weights to your ankles. Not gently, one at a time, each one tied tight and dropped like a stone, and you scream, you can't help it. The edge of the beam drives up into you, slicing between muscle and bone. Your thighs cramp. Your pelvis feels like it's fracturing. You convulse, you bite your own tongue. Blood fills your mouth again, you start to black out. But they throw water on your face, they want you awake. You sway there for what feels like hours. The wind shifts, the field goes quiet. Even the crowd is gone now. This isn't entertainment anymore. It's just grinding the last pieces of you into dust. Historically, this punishment was used across Europe for military offences, minor crimes, even disobedient soldiers. Sometimes it was combined with parade punishment. Victims placed on the horse and dragged through the city. Others were made to ride it for hours until they passed out or bled out. There's a case from Naples, 1534. A soldier accused of stealing food was put on the horse for 24 hours. His groin split. He died of infection. You won't last that long. You don't even last one. They pull you off after your body goes limp. You don't know if you passed out or if your brain just shut down in self-defense. You're barely aware of the ground under your body, of the straps removed, of the rough cart they throw you into again. The world is haze and sparks, like watching fire through smoke. Back at the prison, they dump you in the cell like always. This time you don't move and you lie there, groin bleeding, one leg shaking involuntarily. They leave the door open for a while, as if daring you to try something. You don't. You couldn't even crawl now. You shut your eyes and listen to the quiet. Even your breath sounds ashamed. You open your eyes and nothing happens, no guards, no footsteps. Just the grey of the cell and the distant sound of dripping water somewhere deeper in the prison's gut. Your body is unrecognisable. You feel like a sack of shattered bones held together by skin that forgot how to heal. Your groin pulses with dull heat where the wooden horse carved its memory into you. The pain doesn't even come in waves anymore. It's just there, constant, like the background hum of death circling, waiting. You try to move your legs. One works, the other doesn't. Your arm, what's left of it, lies limp across your chest like a piece of someone else. You can't even feel your fingertips anymore. Your face aches in multiple directions at once. The mask, the gags, the stocks, the rack. They've each left souvenirs pressed deep into the muscles of your jaw and the bones of your skull. Eventually someone enters, not a guard, a man in plain robes, brown, mud-stained. Clean face, no weapon, no whip. A monk, maybe, or a scribe. He looks at you like a farmer sizing up a crop that went bad in the soil. He doesn't speak, just kneels beside you. Then he opens a bag. You tense, what little tensing your muscles can still manage. He pulls out paper, a thin wooden board, a long inked needle, and you realise with a kind of slow horror that you're not about to be punished again. You're about to be recorded. This is the final step. Marking. He lifts your good arm, if you can even call it that, and begins to tattoo. Slow, deliberate lines, black ink. A symbol, not one you recognise. You try to pull away, but the man grips your shoulder with surprising strength. Still, he murmurs. The pain is minor compared to everything else. Just a scraping burn as the needle presses into your skin, dragging ink across flesh that's too thin, too pale. You watch the shape form, a circle with slashes, maybe a sigil, maybe a number, maybe just a way of saying this one is done. In medieval Europe, tattooing was rare, but branding and permanent marking common, essential. In some regions, convicts were branded with letters, T for thief, B for blasphemer, H for heretic. Elsewhere they used shapes or seals. In parts of Germany, prisoners were permanently tattooed with the insignia of the town they betrayed. In Spain, those exiled from cities received a cross or a dog's paw on their back, just in case they tried to return. This wasn't about punishment anymore. It was about cataloguing, proof of survival, or guilt, or both. In rare cases, people were forced to carry written confessions tattooed directly onto their bodies. One man, convicted of treason, had his betrayal etched across his chest in Latin. Every morning he was required to read it aloud to the guard. He died of infection 3 weeks later. The man finishes your mark. He dabs the wound with vinegar, then presses a piece of cloth over it. There, he says, now you belong to history. He packs up and leaves. You lie there, staring at the ceiling. Belong to history. You want to laugh, but your ribs hurt too much. Later, when the guards return, they don't drag you anywhere. They bring clothes. Not clean, not whole, but garments. A tunic, a belt. You squint at them like they were a trick, but they toss them in and lock the door. You sit up, slowly, every joint screams. The pain in your groin is almost unbearable, but you manage, bit by bit. You pull the tunic over your head. It sticks to your wounds, pulls at the tattoo. You wince, but get it on. Then the door opens again. The guard gestures, time to go. You blink. Go where? You croak. It's the first thing you've said in days, maybe weeks. Your voice sounds like gravel and rot. The guard shrugs. Out. You're not sure you understand. Are they letting you leave? Just like that. But they don't explain. They drag you through the halls again, back up the same corridors, past the same tools, the rack, the iron masks, the gallows. You remember the smell of each room, the colour of blood on every floorboard. You don't speak. You pass the courtyard. It's quiet now, no crowd, just silence and stone, and then the gate. Open. A few guards flank the door, spears upright. One of them looks bored. Another glances at you and quickly looks away. You take a step forward. No one stops you. The wind outside is different. Clean. Sharp. It cuts your face like a blade, but it's not cruel. It's alive. You take another step, and another. Your leg buckles. You fall. No one helps you up. You crawl instead. One hand, one leg up, the other hand gone, the other leg useless. You crawl out of the gate like an animal. The sky is wide, too wide. It makes you dizzy. The sun hits your skin and you recoil. You lie in the dirt just beyond the wall, free, or something like it. You close your eyes, and for the first time in what feels like eternity, no one touches you. No one hurts you. No one owns you. The pain is still there, but now it's yours. And now you lie beneath a crooked tree just beyond the shadow of that nightmare fortress. It's quiet. So quiet you can finally hear your own heartbeat again. Not racing, not panicked, just there. Your face is pointed toward the sky, which doesn't even look real anymore. It's too blue, too open. It almost hurts to see something that big after so long spent staring at ceilings and stone walls. A single cloud drifts lazily overhead, and you squint at it like a prisoner trying to remember the name of an old friend. That cloud has no idea what you've been through. It just floats by, free. You try to sit up and something tugs in your ribs, scar tissue pulling tight like a drawstring. You wince, shift onto your good elbow and manage to rise. Your legs still don't work right. Your left foot's dragging and your right thigh burns whenever you shift weight onto it. The muscles don't even feel like they're yours anymore, but they move, and that's something. You don't look back at the gate. You don't want to know if someone's watching, or if they'll change their minds. Instead, you focus forward, on the dirt path that curls off into the woods. Somewhere in that direction there might be a village, or a fire, or a woman with a bowl of soup who doesn't ask questions. Somewhere, maybe, you'll find the edge of this story and the start of something new. But as you walk, or limp, or crawl, or whatever this shuffle counts as, you carry something else with you. Not just the pain, not just the scars. You carry the knowledge of what humans did to each other, in the name of justice, in the name of order, in the name of keeping society safe. The punishments you endured weren't just meant to hurt. They were meant to remind, to shape behaviour, to maintain power, and somehow they were called righteous. You carry those stories now, etched in your skin and soul. The brand, the missing hand, the jaw that doesn't quite close anymore, the mark tattooed on your arm still flaring with heat. Maybe you'll tell someone, maybe not, but you know, and that alone is a kind of legacy, because the bizarre punishments of medieval times weren't bizarre to the people who handed them out. They were tools, traditions, comfortingly cruel, and they weren't forgotten, just buried. So tonight, as you lay your broken body beside a whispering creek, beneath the soft rustle of trees, you breathe in that first real taste of freedom. It smells like moss and dust, and everything not soaked in iron or fire. You survived. Somehow. Not whole.
But still you.
And you drift off beneath the stars, wondering how many others never made it this far. Sweet dreams.